Pokemon. The starter Pokemon is Agumon. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 Digimon Web Evolution and New Move Small Blast. A new way. Well, don't think too much about it. Use a small flame to attack the stone. Qingliu pointed to the boulder not far away and said. Agumon was a little confused, but the orange flame still quickly condensed into a burning fireball in his mouth and bombarded the boulder. Bang! The flame burst and a dull sound rang out. When the smoke and dust dissipated, a fist-sized gravel groove appeared in the middle of the boulder. Agumon looked at the groove and pursed his lips immediately, while Qingliu was not surprised at all. Although the attack did work, the destructive power was not a drop in the ocean for the area of the entire boulder. At this pace, it would take a long time to achieve the effect of shattering the boulder. So, what kind of method is needed to make the small flame more powerful? Agumon looked at Qingliu. Every time you launch a small flame, do you quickly mobilize energy and pursue the fastest speed to compress it into the form of a fireball before launching an attack? Qingliu asked. Agumon nodded and said, I have a rough standard for small flames in my mind. As long as the flames and energy reach that standard, the small flames that are launched can be stably formed. So, have you tried to use a standard that exceeds the small flame in your mouth, accumulate all the flames to the limit as much as possible, and then launch them? But once the standard of the small flame is exceeded, the small flame will not be able to take shape. Agumon asked in confusion. Qingliu shook his head and said, you just need to use the same method to accumulate energy and flames. As for whether it is a small flame at that time, it doesn't matter, because if it succeeds, it means that it is no longer a small flame, but a small explosion. Small explosion, by accumulating small flames in the mouth and spraying them out in one breath, is much more powerful than small flames. However, Agumon does not have this move in his move list, or rather, this is not Agumon's move, but a move that can only be mastered by other branches of Agumon. An obvious difference between Digimon and Pokemon is that Pokemon has a fixed evolutionary route, and even if there are branches, the number is very limited. But Digimon are different. They have a network evolution route, which can achieve multiple forms of evolution that you can hardly understand. The most classic example is Teichi's Tyrannosaurus Miz evolved into Zombie Tyrannosaurus. In fact, this is also a natural evolution route for Tyrannosaurus. If it evolves from Zombie Tyrannosaurus to the ultimate, the final form is Infinite Dragonmon, one of the 4 Dark Lords. That's right, it was the machine evil Dragonmon that was killed in 1 second by Wargreymond's Dragonbane. Under this network evolution route, almost every different form of the same period has its own unique features and moves. For example, Wargreymond's Gaia Energy Cannon and Infinite Dragonmon's Infinite Cannon. And Small Blasting belongs to the Tamer Agumon S of Daimon, and Black Agumon who can evolve into Dark Wargreymon. If it is the digital world, Qingliu may not be sure that Agumon can learn the moves of its cousins, but now this is not the digital world, but the Pokemon world where people can become little masters of moves by learning. Under this worldview, it is reasonable for Agumon to master small explosions, right? Qingliu thought it was reasonable, so he began to let Agumon try. The progress was not smooth at the beginning. Due to muscle memory, once the energy and flames reached a critical point, Agumon would naturally condense into a small flame attack. After slowly overcoming this problem, the next step is to control the limit of flames. In layman's terms, if humans want to stimulate their bodies to reach the real limit, they must constantly challenge the current limit, jump wildly under this limit, and expand the upper limit until there is nothing to expand. And Agumon now has to keep trying and repeating until he finally finds that limit and can master it. Once, twice, 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, 100 times, until he is exhausted. Agumon panted and knelt on the ground. Even though he was very good at using small flames, he was so tired that he couldn't even stand after using it at a high frequency of up to 100 times. Take a short break and try this. What is this? Agumon looked at the cubes of objects in Qingliu's palm in confusion, then picked them up with his claws and put them into his mouth, chewing them. It's called energy cubes, and they are made from the orange fruit you ate before, plus 2 or 3 other kinds of fruit. Both the effect and taste are much better than the fruit. Qingliu explained. It's true now that you put it that way. It's sour and sweet, and a little astringent. It's really delicious, and..." As Agumon said this, he turned over and stood up. "I just used up my physical strength, but now I feel like I can have another small flame." You are eating energy cubes for Dragon-type Pokémon. This attribute is most suitable for you and can also ensure the maximum effect. Seeing Agumon start to jump around, Qingliu said with a smile. "Okay, let's continue training." After that, Agumon turned towards the direction of the boulder, and the flames in his mouth began to surge. Even if the energy block is effective, it takes time to digest it completely. Qingliu pulled it back, took out the healing spray from his backpack, and sprayed it directly around Agumon's mouth. Hiss! Agumon immediately took a breath of cold air, his body stiffened and his facial organs twisted together. Seeing it like this, Qingliu said helplessly, "Even if you have a certain resistance to fire, you will be injured if you use it too many times and the power is not well controlled. Don't move, wait for me to treat the wound on your mouth." Okay. Agumon sat down again and waited quietly for Qingliu to operate. It was only occasionally because of the strong irritation of the healing spray that it would occasionally grimace and take a breath of cold air. When the energy block in the stomach was digested and the drug effect was fully exerted, Agumon began the second round of training under Qingliu's command. Soon it was the third round, the fourth round, the 10th round. Most of the day passed quietly without knowing it. The moon above his head emitted a soft silver light. Agumon, who had just finished his 10th round of rest, was tirelessly looking up, gathering flames, and firing, falling into an infinite cycle. Soon, dozens of small flames were fired again. After most of the day, the boulder had been hit with dense holes, and the surrounding gravel began to fall slowly with each collision. But even so, the boulder still showed no signs of cracking. 97, 98, 99, 100, okay, this round is over. Qingliu's voice fell, but the flame in Agumon's mouth showed no sign of stopping, and it was still accumulating strength. Qingliu frowned and said, "Agumon, 100 times is the limit of your physical strength. Continuing will only cause you unnecessary injuries. Stop immediately." Agumon, who had always listened to Qingliu's words, rarely used his eyes to directly express his refusal. Because, it seemed, to have found a sense of the limit of the flame's endurance. Chapter 27 Small explosion successful. A vigorous flame burned in Agumon's mouth, and a thin flame spread out uncontrollably, illuminating the entire area nearby. In contrast, a more powerful momentum than the small flame was born. This scene, combined with Agumon's eyes just now, Qingliu instantly understood Agumon's situation and said, "Don't worry about me, concentrate on controlling the flame." Agumon opened his mouth, did not reply, and slowly shifted his gaze to the front. "Don't be too stressed, try to imagine it as a large small flame, and when you feel it is almost formed, just shoot it out." In theory, a small explosion is a large small flame, and there are similarities between the two. This is also the fundamental reason why Qingliu feels that Agumon may be able to learn the small explosion. As long as he can master the power of the enlarged version of the flame, Agumon will succeed. Under Qingliu's voice and gaze, a slight explosion suddenly came from the flame in Agumon's mouth, and then the flame suddenly surged, as if Agumon was holding a flaming octopus in his mouth, and all the tentacles were swinging wildly around Agumon's mouth. This was clearly a sign that he was about to lose control, and Qingliu's heart was lifted instantly. If he succeeded, it would be fine, but if he accidentally lost control, the flame would roll back, and a small explosion that was more powerful than the small flame would hit Agumon's mouth without any preparation. Even if he had resistance, it would definitely cause serious injuries to Agumon. He could find another chance, but if he got hurt, not only would it take a long time, but Agumon would also have to endure pain, which was totally unworthy. Qingliu opened his mouth and was about to let Agumon directly launch the flame, but before he could make a sound, a subtle explosion sounded again from inside the flame. The next second, a flame that was even more violent than before burst out. But what made Qingliu feel strange was that compared to before, this more powerful flame seemed to be more docile. Was it an illusion? No. Qingliu turned his gaze to Agumon's eyes. He saw that Agumon's eyes were firm and fierce, and his eyes were fixed on the huge rock opposite. Without asking or responding, Qingliu already knew the answer. Agumon has already mastered the energy that can be gathered into a small explosion. Then what's next? Agumon, fire. As Qingliu finished speaking, the blazing flames were compressed at the center, and turned into a fireball that was only one circle larger than the small flame. It didn't seem to change much, But Qingliu could imagine that the energy inside would definitely crush the small flame. As for how much crush, the burning flames made a dull humming sound in the air, and then rushed through the distance between Agumon and the boulder at a speed far exceeding that of the small flames, and bombarded the boulder. Boom! Exclamation mark. A violent explosion sounded in my ears, surpassing the thousands of small flames before. The gravel was mixed with sand and dust and scattered everywhere. Qingliu had to cover his ears and dodge sideways. Agumon didn't care about it at all, and his big green eyes were fixed on the place where the flames exploded in the smoke. When the smoke and dust dissipated, there was a very obvious pit at the exit on the boulder. Compared to it, the area of the thousands of small flames bombarded before was nothing. If the damage caused by the small flames to the boulder before was like a small bowl for eating, then the area of damage caused by the small explosion just now was more than a basin. Not only the area, but also the depth is a complete victory. Qingliu walked to the front of the pit, stretched out his palm and pressed it in. From the inside to the outside, he had to put half of his forearm in before he touched the bottom of the pit. And Qingliu rubbed his palm carefully at the bottom for a while, then pulled his hand out and looked inside. At the bottom of the pit, cracks as thick as fingers, like spider webs, came into view. Not to mention the crushing power of several times, but after the explosion, there seems to be signs of residual heat burning. Qingliu rubbed the rubble that was still warm on his fingers and looked at Agumon, who was slowly approaching. Well done, Agumon. Qingliu stretched out his hand and patted Agumon on the shoulder to celebrate. But in the end, he didn't use any strength, just a light tap, and Agumon's body suddenly tilted and fell to the ground. If Qingliu hadn't squatted down to hold it, he would have fallen directly to the ground. Seeing Agumon's appearance, Qingliu's heart was hanging in the air, and he asked hurriedly, Agumon, what's wrong? Is there something uncomfortable or something else? After that, he picked up Agumon and prepared to go to the Pokemon Center in Random Town for treatment. Even if there is a possibility of exposure, Qingliu can't gamble, so he has no choice but to choose this path. But before Qingliu took 2 steps, the organs in Agumon's stomach began to wriggle, making a long and dull sound. Qingliu was stunned for a moment, then stared at Agumon for a few seconds, and his expression gradually turned speechless. Agumon scratched his head in embarrassment and sneered, "Hey. Sorry, I'm so hungry that I don't have the strength to stand all of a sudden." Qingliu, who was really frightened, put Agumon down helplessly and took out more than 10 energy cubes from his backpack and handed them to Agumon. Agumon swallowed them all without any hesitation, chewing quickly with his big dinosaur-like mouth, and his expression was quite satisfied. "I remember that I just gave you a meal's worth of energy cubes before the previous round of training. How come you are hungry so quickly?" Qingliu asked. I don't know. Anyway, I felt weak all over after the attack and my stomach was very hungry," Agumon replied while swallowing. Hearing this reply, Qingliu clicked on the panel, and Agumon's information was instantly displayed. Race, Agumon. Classification, reptile Pokemon. Attribute, dragon. Features, sharp claws. Because the claws are sharp, the power of attacks will be increased. Level, 13. Exclusive moves, small flame, fire type, power 60. Sharp claws, fire type, power 40. Small blast. Agumon gathers all its strength to launch a flame attack, with amazing destructive power, but will consume a lot of physical strength at this stage. Fire type, power 75. Mastered moves, none. Race stats, 360, health 50, attack 72, defense 55, special attack 72, special defense 50, speed 61, intimacy, 70. The most important friend, status, hungry, recovering, information summary, XXXXXX. So, although the power of Small Blast is much stronger than Small Flame, the cost is that it requires consuming most of the physical strength, or even directly exhausting it. After reading the information about Small Blast, Aoyagi muttered to himself. But even so, today's hard work is worth it. It can't be used as a daily move, but in a stalemate, it can be used as a trump card to decide the outcome. Also, Agumon has learned Small Blast, which proves that it can indeed learn other Digimon's moves. So by the same token, now that it is a Pokemon, it should be able to learn Pokemon moves that match its own attributes. I originally planned to post it tomorrow, but I thought it might be too late for me to wake up, which would affect your updates, so I worked overtime to finish it. Is it okay to give it a few votes? In addition, I refined the panel data a little bit, so don't worry too much. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Training is for Experience. On the second day, the special training of stable small explosions was still carried out. Because the moves are very physically demanding, even if it is used once in full power, it will be exhausted, so Qingliu had to insert a training of small flames and sharp claws in the process. After a day, the number of energy blocks and healing sprays decreased sharply, but in return, the proficiency and fluency of both small flames and sharp claws have been significantly improved. Small explosions have also been fully mastered, and the probability of success and failure is not as 50-50 as at the beginning. At the same time, the boulder that was used as the training target was completely destroyed. There was a big hole in the east and a groove in the west, and it didn't have the heavy feeling at the beginning. In order to prevent it from not being able to hold on to the end of the training, Qingliu ended the day's training early and took Agumon to patrol the surrounding jungle. On the third day, early in the morning, two figures, one big and one small, were jogging around the woods. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Pay attention to your breathing rhythm. Whether you are running or fighting, your breathing must not be disordered. You must keep a stable rhythm. Qingliu trotted on the spot and said to Agumon beside him. Agumon did not respond. The fast running of several large circles made its physical strength decline quickly. Now it was forced to keep the same speed as Qingliu, who was running in small circles. Especially since it had not eaten breakfast today, the situation was even more serious. Qingliu, I feel a little hungry. After taking a breath, Agumon raised his hand to express his opinion. Qingliu shook his head and refused. I have already said that it is not advisable to do strenuous exercise after a meal. It will affect the normal digestion of food and easily cause indigestion. In severe cases, it will have a significant impact on your stomach. Hold on a little longer, and we will reach the front. Then, okay. Since Qingliu said so, there must be a reason for it. After Agumon nodded, he took a deep breath and continued to run, rushing towards the end of the last lap. Qingliu silently tried to keep up behind. At this moment, his breathing was also very rapid. Even though Agumon's physical strength was almost exhausted, its running speed was still a big challenge for Qingliu, but he still gritted his teeth and persevered. In the previous conversation with Xiaosong, Qingliu indirectly learned a lot of common sense about the native Pokemon world, which he, a time traveler, did not know. For example, the strength of the gym trainer is very strong for most trainers, but the original intention of the gym is to select and train newcomers. As long as they perform well, they can get badges even if they lose. Most of the time, the gym owner will let them go appropriately, or simply train some very useful Pokemon to deal with challengers. For another example, only in the agreement between trainers or the regular league competitions, Pokemon battles cannot attack trainers. When encountering wild Pokemon in the wild, the opponent will not care about anything and often go directly to the trainer. After all, compared with Pokemon, the trainer itself is much weaker, and the IQ of Pokemon is mostly at the passing line, so the difficulty can still be distinguished. Therefore, in order to prepare for possible future situations, while conducting physical training for Agumon, Qingliu also believes that it is necessary to improve his own physical fitness. Moreover, in addition to daily interactions, sweating and training together is also a good way to promote the warmth of feelings. Qingliu breathed a sigh of relief after crossing the finish line. Seeing this, Agumon next to him took out a bottle of water from his backpack and handed it to him. Here. Thank you. Qingliu reached out to take it, drank a sip but did not swallow it, and then rinsed his mouth with it and said, the energy cubes are in the backpack. I have divided the amount for each meal. If it is not enough, there are general energy cubes next to it. You can try, but the taste may be worse. After a moment, Qingliu felt that he was worrying too much. Agumon had no problem with being picky about food or taste differences. He threw all of it into his big mouth and swallowed it directly after chewing for a while. Burp as the food went down his stomach. Agumon's stomach became slightly bigger, and he couldn't help but burp for 4 or 5 seconds. Sorry, I accidentally lost control. Seeing Agumon scratching his head in embarrassment, Qingliu couldn't help laughing. Perhaps in its concept, There is no delicious or undelicious, only edible and inedible. But it's good this way, it's easy to feed. Qingliu glanced at the remaining energy cubes in the school bag. There were still 2/3 of the dragon-type ones left, and 1/5 of the general-purpose ones had just been eaten by Agumon. The original preparation of 2 types of 5 days each, a total of 10 days, now seems that it can't last that long. But the effect is also very obvious. Qingliu can clearly feel that after eating a day of energy cubes, Agumon is still in good spirits today despite the heavy training yesterday. The muscles on his body are getting tighter and tighter, and even the white claws on the front of his arms have become more crystal clear. Sure enough, there is indeed a big difference between expensive things and free things. Unfortunately, most of the money from selling orange fruits has been used up, and the remaining 200 alliance coins have been almost spent after buying his daily necessities. There are no decent fruit trees around here now, so there is no way to sell fruit for a fame like before. I didn't expect that after traveling through time, I would still worry about money. Qingliu couldn't help but dream of returning to the 21st century. However, it's not that there is no way to solve the problem of money. It's just that Agumon and I may not be able to make that money now, unless... Qingliu thought of the money-making channels mentioned by Xiaosong before, and said to himself, unless the level is raised twice, then the number of small explosions will also increase due to the increase in Agumon's own comprehensive strength. Qingliu didn't ask for this powerful trump card to be able to fire more than a dozen shots in a row like the small flame, just to increase the number to 2 times. The first time is used to change the battlefield situation, and the other time is as a backup, just in case, so as to maximize the probability of winning and the safety of himself and Agumon. Thinking of this, Qingliu began to plan the next training schedule while eating breakfast. In the morning, it is still physical training. Improving physical fitness is also to reduce the pressure of small explosions on physical strength. In the afternoon, mixed training of 3 moves will be carried out, and it must be finished before the evening. Then, Qingliu decided to take Agumon to the place where he found wild Pokémon of similar levels when he patrolled the area yesterday, and start to brush the dungeon. After all, training is just to lay the foundation for fighting, and fighting is the fastest way to improve level and strength. Agumon, who is stronger than Pokémon of the same level, has a very good record after training for a few days, and with this small explosion as a trump card, his experience value has also soared. Chapter 29 Forest Taboo. Agumon, Small Flame. In a jungle somewhere, Agumon suddenly poked his head out from behind a tree, opened his mouth and spurted out a small flame. The other party seemed to have discovered the extraordinary power of the fireball, and shook its almost transparent wings violently, dodging the small flames by turning back and forth. At the same time, its silhouette moving through the jungle gradually became clearer. Race, Beedrill, Classification, Poison Bee Pokémon, Attributes, Insect, Poison, Features, Sniper, Level, 11, Exclusive Moves, None, Mastered Moves, Insect Bite, Random Attack, Poison Needle, Silk, Hardening, Continuous Slash, Race Value, 395, Health 65, Attack 90, Defense 40, Special Attack 45, Special Defense 80, Speed 75, Intimacy, -50. After the active attack failed, it was kicked out of the tribe and was extremely angry with you and Agumon. Status, Angry. Information Summary, it has a very strong sense of territory. Once it invades, it will actively attack like crazy. Sometimes they patrol the territory in groups, and their best fighting method is to use poison needles at super fast speed to poison the opponent to death. Beep, beep, beep. The giant bee made a low and angry cry, then raised the huge white needles on its 2 front feet, with crystal light lingering on them, and rushed straight towards Agumon. Use your sharp claws to block its needles, and pay attention to the poison needle on its butt. Qingliu's voice fell, and Agumon's white claws were instantly wrapped in orange energy. The big green eyes stared at the opponent. When the giant bee was about to approach, Agumon took the initiative to take a step forward, and the 2 huge claws swung out as the body moved forward. Ling. The harsh sound of metal clashing suddenly arose. The reaction force generated by the huge energy collision forced Agumon and the giant bee to retreat rapidly. But the wings of the giant bee vibrated violently at a strange speed, forcibly stopping the trend of retreating, and the tail needle on the buttocks shook violently, stabbing towards Agumon. Agumon, who had been prepared for this, turned sideways and very skillfully used the huge claws covered with sharp claw energy to directly grab the giant bee and hold it. At the same time, his body rotated and threw the giant bee over his shoulder to the ground. Small flame. Aowagi's voice sounded, and Agumon opened his mouth and spit out a fireball. The back of the giant bee, which had just been smashed into the ground and had not had time to react, was hit by the small flame. Its eyes turned into circles and lost its ability to fight. After a simple check to confirm that there was indeed no threat, Agumon asked Aowagi, "Aowagi, did this guy attack us before? Its attack method of dodging and then rushing directly at us looks very familiar. Yet, it's the second time." Looking at the column on the panel that showed the giant bee's intimacy with him -50, he mourned for this unlucky guy who was kicked out of the tribe for half a second. But since he had taken action, he had to be mentally prepared to pay the price. We won't get much experience from hitting the same Pokemon twice in a row. Let's go. Let's hit a few more Pokemon before it gets dark. We don't have much time left. After throwing an energy block to Agumon, Qingliu and Agumon quickly left, heading for a target. But the process was somewhat difficult. Agumon, get ready. There are 3 Aboks fighting in front of you on the left. Looking at the 3 messages displayed on the panel, Qingliu quickly pointed out the direction. Okay. Agumon nodded, and his sharp claws quickly covered his claws, rushing in the direction Qingliu pointed. Rustling. Agumon jumped over the 2 bushes blocking the way in front, and rushed into the battlefield. Just as he was about to rush up and fight, the opponent's Aboks reacted faster. Almost at the moment when the bushes made a noise, the 3 Aboks turned their heads together. After seeing that it was Qingliu and Agumon, they quickly let go of their entangled tails without any hesitation and fled in 3 directions. Agumon. Qingliu sighed helplessly, then opened the panel and looked around, pointing to the left side where they came from. There are 2 monkey monsters on the big tree over there. Upon hearing this, Agumon turned around and ran quickly, and Qingliu quickly followed. Soon, 2 monkey monsters who were howling angrily on the tree and punching and kicking each other came into view. Agumon immediately accumulated fire in his mouth, and when he took a few steps to attack the monkey monsters on the top of the tree, the 2 monkey monsters who had not held back at all in the previous second, who were angry and eager to kill each other directly, swallowed their saliva and looked at each other, and then quickly let go of each other, jumping continuously on the treetop at an extraordinary speed, and fled. Qingliu and Agumon were left staring at each other. What should we do now? Oh, forget it. If we continue looking, the situation will probably be similar. Let's just go back to the training ground to practice our moves. Qingliu said helplessly, if I had known, I wouldn't be so impatient. I should have taken it slow and steady. Because the 2 of them had been scouting monsters in the nearby jungle for 2 whole days, beating anyone they saw. With Agumon's fighting power and Qingliu's assistance, they could be said to be invincible in the area. As a result, the nearby Pokemon knew that there were Pokemon being beaten by the same human and Pokemon, and the number was increasing. In just 1 day, more than half of them had been beaten. This information quickly reached the ears of most of the nearby Pokemon. In the end, it led to a situation where every time Qingliu and Agumon appeared and looked for a target to attack, all Pokemon would stop what they were doing and run away as soon as they saw them, without any hesitation at all. Of course, there were exceptions, such as the Pokemon who wanted to defeat Qingliu and Agumon and become famous and came to them on their own initiative. For example, the Beedrill just now. The result is obvious. All those who came to the door were beaten to the point of losing their ability to fight, especially when the 19th level armored bird, which was recognized as the strongest nearby, was defeated by Agumon with a small explosion, and finally thrown to the riverside, where all the Pokemon passing by saw it. Qingliu and Agumon became taboos in this jungle. No Pokemon dared to approach them, and this information showed signs of spreading more and more. It is estimated that the training object will not be found in the future. However, the only good news is that Agumon's level has risen from level 13 to level 14, and there is a vague feeling that it is just 1 step away from breaking through to level 15. Just when Qingliu was looking at the few energy cubes and food left in his backpack, thinking about where to find a suitable Pokemon for Agumon to be the final training object, the training object took the initiative to come to the door. It's New Year's Eve, everyone Happy New Year, and there will be another update in the evening. Chapter 30, Xiaosong's Active Challenge. Strange, last time I was around here, I could occasionally run into a few Pokemon. In order to avoid any unexpected situations, I called you all out, but this time I didn't see any shadows. The girl in a JK uniform and carrying a backpack pushed aside the bushes in front of her eyes and muttered to herself in confusion. The snow hat monster strides forward with his hands across his body. In addition, there is a Pokemon standing behind and to the side of the girl. The one behind her is a snow boy with a black body. Most of his body is hidden in a cone-shaped cloak. Only a pair of small blue eyes and a few big front teeth are exposed, and he looks very solid. There is also a black Pokemon on the side, but unlike the one behind him, its overall body curve is very slender, its left ear and tail are dull red, and its oblique triangular eyes make it look extremely sinister. But it's good this way, so as not to waste time in the battle. But where did Qingliu go? He clearly agreed to train nearby. Xiaosong looked around. The snow hat monster, who had been silent all this time, suddenly seemed to smell something. His eyes kept looking around. Seeing his movements, the nearby Zilla twitched his nose a few times, and finally raised his hand to point to the right front. Twist it. Zilla? Do you mean there's movement ahead? Xiaosong asked when he saw the interaction between the snow hat monster and Zilla. Zilla nodded. Then let's go over there and see what's going on. Everyone moved in the direction that Zilla pointed to. The closer they got, the more excited the snow hat monster's expression became. It smelled the aroma of the fish meat that it had eaten last time, and this time it smelled even more fragrant. Just smelling it from a distance made it want to eat it. Oh! Zilla and the snow boy next to them also smelled the aroma, but they didn't know the situation and just looked at the snow hat monster and Xiaosong with a little confusion. Xiaosong smiled and said, "It's probably that guy. Let's go quietly and give him a surprise." One person and 3 Pokemon quietly moved over, and after seeing the boy and Agumon sitting next to the fire, they made a silent gesture. Zuli monster understood, took a deep breath, mobilized the ice energy in his body, and prepared to blow a freezing wind. But just when it had condensed the energy and had not had time to open its mouth, a woohoo sound came, and a burning feeling suddenly descended. What's going on? Xiaosong was a little confused for a while. Did you ask Zuli monster to use the freezing wind? How come the ice attribute moves became fire attribute? However, it seems that none of his 3 Pokemon have fire attribute moves, and why does this feeling feel very familiar, just like Agumon's small flame? Wait, could it be? Xiaosong looked up all of a sudden, and saw a fireball passing through the bushes and already in front of him. This sudden change made Xiaosong, who was just about to let the 3 Pokemon sneak attack Qingliu without any defense, suddenly confused. Fortunately, the panic only lasted for a moment. The accumulated training made her instinctively want to issue instructions, but suddenly she seemed to remember something and did not speak. Zuliu, Yukiko, and Eula looked at Xiaosong anxiously. Seeing that she was reluctant to speak, the 3 Pokemon looked at each other and quickly mobilized their energy to build an ice wall in front of them. But unexpectedly, the fireball came to them before the ice wall was completed. But when it was close to them, it seemed to lose its energy support and instantly turned into tiny sparks and disappeared. Xiaosong immediately looked like it was just as expected, and the 3 Pokemon looked at a loss. Only Zule looked thoughtful. "Ah, sorry, I thought some Pokemon wanted to sneak attack us, but it was you." Qingliu walked over slowly with Agumon and explained with a smile. "You did the same thing as the last time we fought. Do you think I would believe that you didn't do it on purpose? But didn't you dodge it? That's because I saw you and recognized that it was Agumon's small flame. I don't understand why you are so slow in doing things." It was the first time that Qingliu heard someone praise him from this angle, and he laughed a little embarrassedly. Seeing Qingliu laugh, Xiaosong was even more angry and started to complain crazily. Yuki and Uro were a little confused when they saw the plot change 180 degrees in a minute. Agumon and Yuki, who already knew each other, gathered together and started to communicate. Seeing that his eldest brother seemed to have a good relationship with the other party, Yuki hesitated for a moment and slowly came over to join their conversation. Only Ura kept a stern face and stared at Agumon. The flame just now was obviously emitted by the other party. With that level of power and speed, if it was the target, it might not be able to block it at all, and could only dodge it with speed. Moreover, as the distance between the two sides narrowed, Ura instinctively had a strong premonition. This was an extremely dangerous Pokemon, and it exuded an aura that made it feel like sitting on pins and needles, which made Ura very uncomfortable. "Hello." A relatively neutral voice was in front of him. Ura looked up and saw that the other party was already standing in front of him and stretched out his hand to him. After a slight hesitation, he also stretched out his hand, and Agumon's hands were held together. My name is Agumon. I heard from Zuli Monster that your name is Yura. Please give me more guidance in the future. Agumon said while shaking hands. Please give me more guidance in the future? Why not now? Seeing that the other party looked harmless, Yura's seemingly small and delicate fingers suddenly stretched out 2 white claws and slashed directly towards Agumon. A hand suddenly inserted into the field of vision and blocked the middle. Zuli Monster shook his head firmly, indicating that it was not allowed. Seeing that his elder brother had said so, it was not easy for Nyamla to continue doing anything. He retracted his outstretched claws and also pulled back the hand that was tightly clasped with Agumon. He put his hands on his hips and silently walked to the other side to sit down. This made Zuli Monster a little embarrassed, and he quickly said that it was just like that. Agumon, who was good-tempered, naturally would not be angry. After saying that he didn't mind, the atmosphere gradually recovered. I'm sorry, that kid has always been like this, not trusting anyone, and full of thorns. It took a long time for Zuli Monster and I to slowly accept it. Xia Song, who was watching the whole process, explained with a smile. Why do I feel that your apology is not sincere at all? Qingliu glanced at her expression and answered. I just learned it from some people. I haven't seen you for a few days, and your attitude is very arrogant. This is not called arrogance, this is called confidence in your own strength. How about it, do you want to fight me again? Xia Song said with a smile, his face full of provocation. Chapter 31 Agumon 1v3. Challenge. Qingliu looked at Xia Song in surprise, and then glanced at the 3 Pokemon beside him, Zulu and the others. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows with a smile. He had originally planned to discuss this matter, but now Xia Song took the initiative to challenge? This was unexpected for Qingliu. After all, Xia Song was not stupid. She had seen Agumon's performance with her own eyes. It didn't make sense for her to let Zulu get hurt in vain when she knew there was a huge gap. So, what made her so confident? Qingliu couldn't help but be curious. Don't be so smiling, just say whether you dare to accept the challenge. Looking at Qingliu's expression that seemed to want to laugh but couldn't, Xia Song wanted to give him a beating. Of course, I'd love to. Qingliu would naturally not refuse an experience pack that provided enough experience, not to mention that it was delivered to her door. Well, you haven't captured any other Pokemon yet, right? No, only Agumon. After Xia Song confirmed that Qingliu still only had Agumon, he pointed to the cold-looking Yura next to him with his arms crossed. The Pokemon I'm using this time is Yura. Qingliu was not surprised. The Grass plus Ice attribute of Uchiha is destined to be suppressed by Agumon's Small Flame 4 times, second only to the Dry Skin attribute Parasite's 5 times Weak Fire. It is also slow, making it a target for Agumon. As for Yuki, if I remember correctly, before it evolved, its ability was too average. Qingliu immediately opened the panel. Race, Snow Boy, Classification, Snow Pokemon, Attribute, Ice, Feature, Frozen Body, Level 11, Exclusive Moves, None, Mastered Moves, Headbutt, Snow, Scare, Shadow Clone, Race Value, 300, Horsepower 50, Attack 50, Defense 50, Special Attack 50, Special Defense 50, Speed 50, Intimacy, 1, Status, Normal, Information Summary, Snowboy often lives in snowy places and has the ability to be active even in extremely cold places. It will appear when the snow starts to fall. If it appears in the middle of the night, it means that a blizzard will suddenly occur. It is rumored that the places where Snowboy lives will become more and more wealthy and have many children and grandchildren, so there is a custom of making ice cubes from clean water and offering them at the door. Apart from the combined spells of the Fortune Cat and the Fertility Guanine in metaphysics, it is indeed mediocre. Qingliu looked at the last one, Yura. Race, Yura. Classification, Hook Pokemon. Attributes, Dark, Ice. Features, Psychic. Level 13. Exclusive Moves, None. Mastered Moves, Grab, Stare, Taunt, Lightning Flash, Ice Gravel, Metal Claw, Bite. Race Value, 430, Horsepower 55, Attack 95, Defense 55, Special Attack 35, Special Defense 75, Speed 115, Intimacy, 0, Status, Normal, with Preemptive Claw. Information Summary, it lives in cold areas, has a sinister and cunning personality, often hides in dark environments and uses its claws. It will hunt in groups and steal the eggs of bird Pokémon, so it is often hated by breeders. A Pokémon with extremely fast speed, and it also has preemptive claw, plus an ice-type move that restrains dragons. No wonder it is so brave. Qingliu thought to himself. Perhaps Yura was indeed threatening Agumon a few days ago to a certain extent, but the current Agumon is no longer the same as the Agumon a few days ago. If they really fought, Qingliu was afraid that the winner would be decided in just 2 moves, which would dampen Xiaosong's confidence and enthusiasm. So, Qingliu thought of a perfect solution. Xiaosong, how about this? I'll just use Agumon, and you, let your 3 Pokémon go together. Xiaosong. What are you talking about? I said, Agumon versus 3. After hearing the words repeated, Xiaosong immediately stared at Qingliu with an expression of looking at a fool. In her cognition, even if Agumon was stronger than Yukimon and Yuki Boy, even Yura might not be a match, but that was based on a one-on-one situation. Now it's a 1-on-3 situation, and the strength of these 3 is at the same level. How could Agumon win? Yukimon and Yuki Boy didn't say much, and Yura, who had been silent all the time, looked even gloomier. His eyes first glanced at Qingliu, and then fell on Agumon, his eyes full of hostility. Even if it's a joke, you shouldn't do this. You have no chance of winning against 3 people. Even if I win, people will say that I won unfairly. No way. Zuli Monster nodded in agreement. Since I said it, I'm serious, right, Agumon? Qingliu looked at Agumon. Of course. Agumon immediately stepped back, creating enough space, and showed the claws on the tip of his palm, as if ready for battle. Seeing that Qingliu and Agumon's meanings were clear, Xiaosong also put away the smile on his face. In this case, I won't show mercy. For a villain who was taught by his father, a gym trainer, and who also aspired to become a gym trainer of the cutting-edge gym, Xiaosong also has her own pride. It was fine that she was defeated by Qingliu 1-on-1 before, but now she actually proposed a 1-on-3 match. She decided to teach Qingliu a lesson. Of course, I'd love to. Qingliu also slowly stepped back until she was behind Agumon. Snowcap, Snowboy, and Yura, let them know what a wrong decision they made. The 3 Pokémon nodded in unison, dispersed and gathered, and prepared for battle. We attack first. Snowcap uses Find Snow and Leaves on the left, Snowboy uses Find Snow on the right, Yura, use Lightning Flash and rush forward directly. Snowcap and Snowboy raised their arms at the same time, and fine snow began to fall from the sky. Leaves on the ground were driven up and mixed in the flying snow. 2 colors of light lit up behind Yura, and it shot out quickly between the white snow and fallen leaves, rushing straight towards Agumon. Snowcap and Snowboy attacked while providing cover, and Yura was responsible for the charge. In just a few seconds, the 3 Pokémon had formed a very good cooperation. Xiaosong was also very proud of this. As a prospective successor of the gym, in order to develop in the future, her father had already laid a foundation for a team battle system for her. When the team battle began, it would begin to show its true edge. For example, now, the combat power of the 3 Pokémon can be said to be 1 + 1 + 1, 3. Qingliu also noticed the extraordinary changes of the 3 Pokémon under Xiaosong's command at this moment, and the difficulty was obviously increased a lot. However, in comparison, Qingliu thought more about the experience points gained by defeating the 3 Pokémon, which should also be 1 + 1 + 1, 3, right? Chapter 32 Using Small Explosions. If I remember correctly, it was indeed like that. In that case, Agumon, fire a small flame straight ahead. The fire energy condensed and compressed, and a fireball spewed out of Agumon's mouth, shooting straight into the area covered by fine snow and leaves. Yura, don't confront head-on, be careful to dodge. Xiaosong said immediately when she saw the small flame. She had seen the power of Agumon's small flame, so she would definitely not let Yura take it head-on. Nula. Yura responded, relying on its own extremely fast speed, plus the explosive speed brought by the flash of lightning. Yura easily twisted away the small flame and continued to charge. Seeing that the tentative attack failed, Qingliu was not surprised. After all, this Pokémon is known for its speed. If it can't dodge this, there is no need to even start this battle. But if the fast Yura can dodge it, can the other 2 slow-moving Snow Hat monsters and Snowboy dodge it? A small flame is coming from the left front, and the same is coming from the right front. For Agumon now, the small flames were fired at very close times and flew to both sides. However, due to the cover of the leaves and the fine snow, they only hit the position next to the Snow Hat Monster and the Snow Boy, and did not cause much damage, but only interrupted their interference moves. But this was enough for Qingliu. Without the cover of the fine snow and leaves, the figure of Yura appeared. It had already rushed to less than 5 meters away from Agumon. Yura, metal claws. Agumon, sharp claws to block it. Yura and Agumon each turned their silver and orange lights on their claws into huge energy to cover them, and attacked each other. At this moment, at the speed of the energy mobilization that was originally evenly matched, a faint white light suddenly flashed on Yura's claws. The next second, Yura's metal claws took shape, and he took the lead and grabbed Agumon's shoulder. Well done! Xiao Song praised loudly. Qingliu recalled the information on the panel and the faint light just now, and asked, "Isn't that the preemptive claw just now?" "Yes," Xiao Song said excitedly. The preemptive claw is a kind of prop that is light and sharp and looks like a dragon's tooth. In battle, there is a chance to accelerate the energy and the speed of using moves, so as to attack one step faster than the opponent. This is also one of the reasons why she dared to let Yura challenge Agumon before. Using Yura's already fast speed, plus the improvement of the preemptive claw, Agumon can be suppressed in terms of mobility, and finally look for opportunities to break the situation, not to mention that there are now Yuki Hat Monster and Yuki Boy to assist. Qingliu, you will regret your decision soon. Really? Qingliu smiled and said, "Don't think you win after you touch it, Agumon. Use sharp claws to grab it back." "What?" Agumon, who was suppressed by the metal claws, suddenly raised the sharp claws on his hand at a certain moment, blocking the attack of Yura, and took a step forward, and the sharp claws began to dance. Ding ding ding. There was a burst of intensive collisions, and Agumon roared and directly hit Yura back. Xiao Song immediately asked Yura to use Lightning Flash to distance himself. "Even if we have an advantage, we can't be careless." After seeing that even in the face of the accelerated attack of the preemptive claw, Qingliu and Agumon could still find the air attack of the preemptive claw to counterattack and even force Yura back head-on, Xiao Song quickly put away the mentality when he was in the upper hand just now. It would be fine if 3 against 1 won, but if something went wrong, it would be a big laugh. We must nip all possibilities in the bud. Snow Hat Monster, Frozen Wind, Yuki Boy uses Shadow Clone to stick to it, and Yura keeps a distance and uses Ice Gravel. Sharp ice boulders were thrown by Yura, and the Frozen Wind of the Snow Hat Monster kept advancing and attacking, while the wind pushed the speed of the ice boulders. The Snow Boy turned into 8 blurry and flickering shadows and quickly approached Agumon. It was still Xiao Song's very good cover plus attack method, and under her command, the 3 Pokémon cooperated very well, almost not giving Agumon too much space to dodge, and every attack was forced to a blind spot. Don't worry about the shadow clones, fire a small flame straight ahead, and then rush forward. Compared to Xiao Song, Qingliu directly chose to break through the middle gate. The blazing small flame melted the ice boulders, and the remaining heat blocked the frozen wind. At this time, the 8 shadow clones of Yuki Boy had already surrounded Agumon. Snow Boy, headbutt attack. As the cabbage flower heart fell, 8 blurry Snow Boys lowered their heads at the same time, revealing the tops of their pointed hats, and rushed towards Agumon. Faced with this situation, seeing the shadow clone move for the first time, Agumon, who was confused about the way, suddenly jumped up and dodged all the attacks below. At this moment, Agumon suddenly felt the light above his head dim. At some point, Yura had already jumped into the air and waited for Agumon. It opened its mouth, revealing 4 sharp teeth lingering with malicious energy. Did you guess that he would choose to jump to avoid the attack? Yes, even if you don't let Agumon jump, I will force you to jump in other ways. Xiao Song said with a confident smile on his face, "Since I was defeated by you last time, I have been thinking about how to beat you. Originally, Zuli Monster or Xianla couldn't do this kind of attack rhythm, but now, I have enough people to implement the strategic plan. Zuli Monster, use all your momentum and use the freezing wind in the air with all your strength." The cold wind blew again, blowing out pieces of ice on Agumon's arms, legs, and body, which jumped into the air without any room to dodge, completely blocking the movement of Agumon's joints. Above his head, Xianla's mouth was shining with dark energy, and he swooped down with his bloody mouth open. One created an opportunity, one blocked the action, and one attacked, just like a deadly game. We won. Seeing this scene, Xiao Song clenched his fists and was extremely confident. Even if Xiaosong saw flames condensing in Agumon's mouth and the high temperature melting the ice on his head, ready to launch at Yura, he was not worried. Because Yukiana, whose headbutt attack missed, now joined the auxiliary camp, summoned Fine Snow at Agumon's location, and cooperated with Yuki's freezing wind to try to weaken the power of the small flame to the minimum. At that time, as long as Yura's bite hits successfully, Yuki and Yukiana will rush forward, and the battle will be completely over. But what Xiaosong did not expect was that Agumon did not use a small flame, but a new move that he had mastered in special training in the past few days. Agumon, the warm-up is over, use a small blast. Chapter 33, Small explosions show their power. The burning flames quickly condensed in Agumon's mouth, turning into a raging fireball, and as time went by, the size of the fireball became larger and larger. The familiar fireball, but the size was very different, and the name of the move was not consistent with the impression, which made Xiaosong stunned for a moment. I haven't used this move in the previous battle, and I haven't heard him mention it before. Is it a new one? Xiaosong didn't know, but she knew that the arrow was on the string and had to be shot. If this opportunity was missed, according to Qingliu's character, it would never make the same mistake as now. At that time, it would be really difficult to resolve the battle. Moreover, with the fine snow and frozen wind as a shield to weaken the power of Agumon's moves, even if it hits Yura, it is highly likely that it will not lose its combat effectiveness directly. It's a gamble. Yura just resisted and used bite. Nula. Yura thought so too. It can accept even a little injury, as long as its bite hits, it can directly lock in the victory. Yula is absolutely confident in the power of his moves. But as the distance gets closer, when his eyes come into contact with a fireball that has just been fired from Agumon's mouth, Yula's confidence is shaken. The scorching temperature and the hair on its back that is almost standing upside down all tell it that this move is definitely not as simple as imagined. Xiaosong, who has been observing the battle, also keenly realized that the power of this attack is completely different from what she originally expected, and even a thought suddenly emerged in her mind: if she takes it head-on, she might die. The resistance and fear of the death of Pokémon prompted her to abandon the combat order she had just drawn up and shouted quickly, "Nala, cancel the attack, dodge quickly." Nala, who also felt bad, ignored the backlash of his falling body and the moves, and directly cancelled the bite move. At the same time, a white light appeared behind him, trying to use the flash of lightning to forcibly change direction in the air to avoid Agumon's attack. But it was too late. The flash of lightning had just started, and the fireball several times larger than the small flame had already been fired from Agumon's mouth. The wind and snow shield that Xiaosong planned to use to weaken the power of the flame, which was a combination of the fine snow of the snow boy and the freezing wind of the snow hat monster, did not play any role and melted at the moment of contact. When the scorching temperature and the scorching flames illuminated Nala's face, by the time it reacted, the small explosion was almost in front of it. Then, it exploded. Boom! Exclamation mark. The power of the flame explosion and burning was released in an instant. In a burst of chi-chi-chi sounds, accompanied by billowing smoke, the heat wave swept around like ripples dripping on the water. The remaining frozen wind and fine snow were all blown away and melted. The snow hat monster and the snow boy were overturned to the ground by the heat wave. Even Xiaosong, who was standing at a safe distance, was forced to use his hands to block the rolling heat wave. But she was not in the mood to care about her own situation at the moment, but looked towards the center of the battlefield against a heat wave. A burnt black figure flew out from the middle, hit a tree beside it, and fainted completely. Damn it! Seeing that a small explosion completely lost the combat effectiveness of the almost full state of the snow and frozen wind, and fell into a dying state, Xiaosong couldn't help but clench his fists. You know, the effect that the small flame could only produce against the snow hat monster with 4 times the restraint before, and now the same thing happened to the snow hat monster. How could this move be so powerful? Xiaosong even suspected that if his 3 Pokémon stood together, this small explosion could wipe them out. But it seems that it consumes a lot of physical strength. Even if there is no Yura, there are still Yukiman and Yukiana. It's not that there is no chance. Xiaosong looked at Agumon, who was a little out of breath, and her thoughts were jumping rapidly in her mind, but before she could speak, Qingliu's voice sounded before her. Use small flames on the Yukiman on the left, and then accumulate the power of sharp claws and charge towards Yukiana. 2 fireballs flew in the wind, through the smoke and heat waves, and rushed straight towards the Yukiman. Unsurprisingly, the Agumon, who was restrained by the fire type, could only delay a little time even if he used the move to resist Xia Song's reminder. In the end, it fell down unsurprisingly and very reasonably. Snow Boy. Seeing that the Snow Hat monster was killed in an instant, Xia Song quickly turned his sight away, ready to let Snow Boy pay attention, but found that Agumon had stood in front of Snow Boy and raised his arms high. Ling. Agumon's claws landed on the top of Snow Boy's head, making a crisp knocking sound, and then a big bump appeared, and Snow Boy's eyes rolled back and slowly fell down. Since then, all three Pokemon have lost their combat effectiveness. How is it possible? Xia Song looked at Agumon and the Pokemon that had fainted around it, and his eyes gradually became dull. Although the three Pokemon were all Ice-type and were restrained by Agumon's Fire-type moves, on the other hand, the three Ice-type Pokemon were all Dragon-type Pokemon that could restrain Agumon. Three Pokemon fighting one, it would be fine if they didn't win, but they were all defeated by 1 against 3. What was he doing? He had never heard of Pokemon of almost the same level being able to fight 3 against 1 and then be wiped out by the opponent's 1. Especially when she remembered that she had specially come to Qingliu to fight after training, trying to regain some ground and only let the play, she became even more desperate. She couldn't beat all 3, and she was very confident that she would only use 1. At this moment, Xia Song felt unprecedented embarrassment, and she began to doubt her own strength. Maybe it was really like what Qingliu said when he used the provocation method to stimulate the Snow Hat monster at the beginning, that she really had no level and was not qualified to inherit the Taoist temple? Or, maybe he just said the truth by accident? Xia Song didn't know, but now she was very confused. Qingliu stood beside her silently, looking at her like this, and was deeply grateful for his decision to let Xia Song fight with 3 Pokemon. If she came one by one, she would have to experience this kind of despair 3 times, and each time was deeper than the last, but now, Xia Song only needed to experience it once. Qingliu slowly squatted down, patted Xia Song on the shoulder and said, "Okay, don't just sit here like an idiot. If you don't help treat Xianla, it will die." Chapter 34 Target, Lost Tower. Xia Song then remembered that Chura had been hit by a small explosion head-on, and fell to the side without knowing whether he was dead or alive, so he quickly stood up and took out a healing spray to treat the injury. Qingliu watched this scene silently, and finally sighed helplessly, shook his head and said to himself, "I am indeed a gentle person." Before, Agumon showed goodwill and wanted to shake hands with Chura, but Chura wanted to attack Agumon. Qingliu, who was standing aside, had always seen it. It was still the same. Since you have taken action, you must be aware of the consequences, so Qingliu took it as the first target of the small explosion. But after all, it is Xia Song's Pokemon. Xia Song gave him his Poké Ball, told him some useful information, and helped him test Agumon's strength twice in a row, especially when he couldn't find Pokemon to continue to be Agumon's training target. He took the initiative to challenge him. These were all very useful to him, so Qingliu once again let Agumon hold back. But even so, Qingliu was very satisfied with the power of the small explosion, and it could be used as a killer move. The hard work of the special training these days has not been in vain, and Qingliu looked at Agumon, opened the panel, and locked his eyes on the column of level. The number there has changed from 14 to 15. It means that with the result of the battle, Agumon's level has achieved a breakthrough after stagnating for a few days and reached level 15. In this way, Agumon's basic abilities and physical fitness will also improve with a level increase, so that most of his physical strength will not be drained by using small explosions. Next, it's the next goal. Qingliu raised his head and looked into the distance. It was like passing through the gradually darkening night sky and the obstruction of the jungle and returning to the stone tower in the south of Sui town. How is it? Fortunately, although the injury is not light, it is not as bad as the previous Snow Hat monster. I have already dealt with it and recovered the Poké Ball. It's not a big problem. Qingliu nodded, handed over a grilled fish, and then asked Agumon to give 2 to the Snow Hat monster and the Snow Boy. With the help of spices, salt and other condiments purchased in Sui town, the last shortcoming of the grilled fish, which was already fragrant but lacked a little taste, was made up. It was simply a delicacy on Earth. The Snow Hat monster and the Snow Boy ate so much that they accidentally ate too fast and the fish bone got stuck in their throats. In the end, they had to use ice energy to freeze it into small ice cubes and spit it out. Whenever seeing this, Qingliu couldn't help but sigh at the strength of Agumon's throat and stomach. He had never seen it stuck. Or was it also like the snow hat monsters, quietly burning it in the throat with fire? At this moment, Qingliu suddenly wanted to pry open Agumon's mouth to take a look, and Xia Song's sighing voice came. I didn't expect that after just a few days of not seeing you in Agumon, you've become so strong. All my Pokemon are no match for you too. Qingliu swallowed the grilled fish in his mouth and said, your Pokemon's attributes are too restrained by Agumon, and it just so happens that Agumon has mastered new moves. You don't have to comfort me, I know I was crushed by hard power. Xia Song paused for a moment and continued, but just now, I also figured out a lot of problems, the shortcomings of my own command, the goals of life, etc. I won't give up, I will use all my momentum to move forward, and then challenge you again. That's good. Qingliu smiled and nodded. Now this kind of indomitable and courageous attitude is truly the spirit of a gym heir. Xia Song didn't care too much about Qingliu's rare compliment, but skipped the topic and asked, what are you going to do next? Continue special training. The purpose of special training has been achieved, and there is not much food left. I plan to return to Sui Town tomorrow. Return to Sui Town? Not moving forward. Xia Song thought for a moment and asked, now that Agumon has a good fighting capacity and has mastered powerful new moves, and is going back to Sui Town, are you still thinking about challenging Sirona? Qingliu heard this and slowly looked at Xia Song. I don't know why, but I always feel that she seems to like watching melons very much, or rather, she wants to see herself being beaten up by Sirona and then comfort herself. Thinking of this, Qingliu couldn't help but give her a headshot. Don't worry about this matter for me all day long. I have a clear understanding of the gap in strength, and I won't be like a fool to do meaningless things. Xia Song, who was in pain, wanted to take action but was stopped by Qingliu. Looking at the grilled fish in his hand, he was silent for a while and decided to let Qingliu go. Qingliu then withdrew his hand to suppress her. Since you're not challenging Sirona, what do you want to do? The nearby Pokemon now run away when they see Agumon and me. There's no one to serve as a sparring partner for Agumon to improve his strength, and I'm out of money. I'll go back to Sui Town and find something that satisfies these two conditions. After hearing the first half, Xia Song suddenly realized that it was no wonder that when she walked into the jungle today, she didn't see any wild Pokemon. It turned out that they were all beaten by Agumon. Thinking that she was not the only one who was beaten, and there were many others, Xia Song felt much better. When she heard the second half of Qingliu's words, Xia Song's thin eyebrows slowly frowned. After thinking about it, Xia Song finally thought of a place where he could find Pokemon that could be opponents of Agumon and make money. Do you mean that you want to challenge the Lost Tower? Yes. The ghost-type Pokemon living in the Lost Tower can be an excellent training opponent for Agumon, and at the same time, he can get corresponding cash rewards after passing each level. This is a perfect match for me who is short of money and opponents. Of course, this does not mean that the mayor of Sui Town is stupid and gives money away for nothing. Qingliu also knows that the Pokemon in it are stronger than the previous one. Even the weakest first layer is definitely stronger than Xiaosu. Moreover, most of them can sneak through walls or lurk in the dark places of walls to attack. Even group fights are definitely the norm. In the past, Qingliu did not have the confidence to challenge and pass at least one level. But after the special training in the past few days, the situation is completely different. First of all, Agumon's level has been raised from level 13 to level 15, and its all-round abilities have been significantly improved. Secondly, it has mastered the powerful move Small Blast that consumes a lot of physical strength. Finally, it is a combination of the two, reducing the consumption of moves so that Agumon will not be close to exhaustion after using a Small Blast. It is even possible to use two Small Blasts. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, Lost Tower Outsiders. Random Town, outside the Lost Tower. As soon as the news that someone challenged the Lost Tower and won a huge reward came out, especially when that person was the famous beauty trainer Sharona in the Sinnoh region, all the nearby news media and trainers rushed to Random Town. Some came for Sharona, and some came for the reward of the Lost Tower. The former did not find the elusive Sharona, and the latter. They firmly believed, Sharona is a human, her Pokemon are Pokemon, they are also human, their Pokemon are also Pokemon, if she can do it, they can definitely do it too. Many confident new trainers began to challenge the Lost Tower. In order not to make their trip in vain, the news media that did not interview Sharona turned their targets to these trainers who challenged the Lost Tower later. After all, the Lost Tower is also a famous trial place nearby. If two people can pass the level in a short period of time, and one of them is Sharona, this heat can barely meet the minimum requirements of this news. But what they didn't expect was that after 5 days, except for an older youth who lied about his age and passed 2 levels and was discovered, all other trainers who had tried to challenge the tower legally failed. None of them succeeded. When they saw another trainer and his Pokemon come out in a dusty state, the journalists who had been planning to take pictures put down their cameras. Alice, failed again. How many have you failed today? I don't know. Anyway, it's more than 10. I thought we could take advantage of the crowd and maybe get someone who passed the level, but we didn't expect that all of them have been wiped out so far. Maybe they all came with the same idea as you, thinking that the people in front would consume the physical strength of the Pokemon in the Lost Tower, and then they would go up to pick up the leaks, but in the end, a group of sneaky trainers all fell on the first level. I really don't understand how these trainers dare to travel. Not to mention passing 5 levels, there is not even 1 level. The time they spent training and cultivating Pokemon is wasted on dogs. Some reporters who gave up another news and ran to the Lost Tower to wait could not help but curse. Okay, it's your own choice, you can't blame others. An older reporter put away his camera and said to the rest of his colleagues earnestly, as a person who has been through it, I advise you to learn to give up appropriately, to retreat when you advance, instead of insisting blindly. I'm going to withdraw to Vale City. I heard that there have been some strange movements of meteorites there recently. Maybe I can make up for the losses. Does anyone want to go with me? As soon as this was said, more than half of the people were tempted. After squatting here for 5 days, there was no gain at all. It is very likely that Sharona has also left Sui town. It seems that there is no point in waiting any longer. It is better to find a news as soon as possible. So, more than half of the reporters who had the idea of leaving began to leave with the old reporter. Only 5 or 6 people who looked younger were left, as well as the tall reporter who gave up other news and stayed, but the result was not satisfactory and cursed. I saw that you were so angry just now, why didn't you leave? Anyway, time has been wasted. I have to lose with conviction. I won't leave until the last challenger leaves. On the other side of the Lost Tower, the plump mayor of Sui Town looked at most of the reporters who left, as well as the few who stayed, and shook his head in disappointment. Alice. Seeing this, the assistant next to him couldn't help but ask, Mayor, it's okay if the other reporters leave, as long as the 2 media in our town are still here, they are ranked among the top in the Sinnoh region. I'm not sighing because of those reporters. Then, are they those trainers? The mayor nodded slowly, his double chin looming, and said in a melancholy tone, originally, I was thinking that this time, with the momentum of Miss Sharona's clearance, the news media would promote it more, and the reputation of the Lost Tower would be completely established. After the efficiency is improved, maybe Sui Town can also become Sui City. As a result, except for Miss Sharona, the other trainers are like cannon fodder, Alice. In addition, fewer and fewer people have come to sign up for clearance in the past few days, and the overall level of trainers has become lower and lower. Even with the top publicity media in the Sinnoh region, it is still a waste of effort, and marketing is impossible. Mayor, should we ask the better trainers in the town to slightly? The assistant made a gesture quietly. No need, that would only make other people laugh at me. The mayor sighed again and said, it seems that I can't improve the town of Random before I leave office. Forget it, let's go. There are already a lot of things that have been piled up in the past few days. Let's go back and deal with them all. The assistant quickly took out the Poké Ball and prepared to release the transportation vehicle, the Dodo, and found that a man and a woman were walking outside the Lost Tower. The woman looked very familiar. Mayor, Miss Xia Song seems to be going to challenge the Lost Tower. Do we need to take another look? The mayor took a look and stopped. Although Xia Song had challenged the Lost Tower before, and there was not much difference between her and other challengers, she fell on the first floor, but her father was the gym trainer of the Cutting Edge Gym in Cutting Edge City after all. It was reasonable for her to give her some face. And in terms of strength, Xiaosong is undoubtedly the one who is closest to passing the first level. If she is in better condition, or performs better, it is possible that she can reach the second level. Well, let's wait and see the result. After the mayor said this, his eyes fell on the figure next to Xiaosong, his brows slightly frowned, and asked, "Do you know the person standing next to her?" The assistant hurriedly said, "I haven't seen her." Miss Xiaosong will pester some people from time to time to ask about clothing and accessories. Maybe this time is the same. It's possible. After a few glances, the mayor ignored it and put his attention back on Xiaosong. As long as she can pass the first level, and then do a little marketing, at least the initial preparation can be recovered a little. The mayor thought to himself. The goal of the journalists is more clear. When Xiaosong paid the fee, someone called out her identity. They raised their cameras and other equipment and ran to Xiaosong for an interview. For this purpose, they directly separated Qingliu, who was originally standing next to Xiaosong. Seeing this scene, Xiaosong wanted to dodge an embarrassment. He wanted to bypass it but couldn't escape the reporter's pursuit and interception. In the end, he could only look at Qingliu helplessly. Qingliu raised his hand to give her an encouraging gesture and walked directly into the Lost Tower. The reporters who were keeping an eye on everything saw this scene and ignored it after a brief hesitation. Compared to this person of unknown origin, it is safer to interview Xiaosong, who has a solid foundation. They have already failed once. If Zhebei comes this time, they will probably have to pack up and leave when they go back. As for whether Qingliu can pass the first floor, even if he came with Xiaosong, they did not have any expectations. In the past few days, they have seen too many examples of people who were full of vigor before entering, but became exhausted not long after entering. Qingliu was automatically classified as this kind of people. The mayor, who had been observing, also noticed this scene and frowned. What's going on? Why is it him instead of Xiaosong who went in? If he was eliminated quickly, it would be fine. If he had a Pokemon that was good at delaying time, the time he had to wait for Xiaosong to challenge would be postponed a lot, which made his already bad mood worse. The assistant also knew that after waiting for several days without any results, the mayor's patience had been exhausted, so he hurriedly said, "It may be that Miss Xiaosong was stopped by reporters, so she had to let her friends go in first. I will drive away those reporters and let Miss Xiaosong go in first." "No need." The mayor let out a long breath expressionlessly, crossed his arms, and tapped his arm with his index finger. "Since it has come to this point, there is no need to do such a bad thing. Just wait for him to fail and come out, and treat it as the last wait." But what no one expected was, this wait lasted for half an hour without any movement. Chapter 36, Challenging the Lost Tower. G. Woo-ah-hee-hee, ha-ha, goo-goo. Ignoring the strange sounds that occasionally rang in his ears, Qingliu looked back and forth in the rooms on this floor. Just like Xiaosong said, there is no surveillance, the light is dim, and there is this gloomy air. Walking into the Lost Tower, a cold atmosphere instantly surged up from all around, and even Qingliu couldn't help but sneeze. It's really as gloomy as a cemetery. Especially after Qingliu didn't respond, these strange sounds evolved into shrill and terrifying, and the atmosphere of the cemetery was created vividly, which made Qingliu pay extra attention. In contrast, Agumon seemed very calm. The big green eyes looked to the left and the right, without any fear at all, but more of curiosity about the howling. "Qingliu, are there really ghosts in this world?" After pulling open a stone tablet and finding nothing underneath, Agumon turned his head and asked, "No." "Then what are these strange noises?" Qingliu looked at the corners of the darkest part of this floor, and saw the shadows surging above, and said, "There is no such thing as ghosts in the Pokemon world, but there are ghost-type Pokemon, which are more like ghosts than ordinary Pokemon. So, these are all ghost-type Pokemon." That's what Xiaosong said, but there are exceptions. Qingliu raised his head and looked at the figure hanging upside down on the hanging rod above his head, with two wings wrapped around his body. The light in the room was not good, but with the existence of the panel illustration function, Qingliu easily found the location of the two of them, and their information was also displayed. Race, Zubat. Classification, Bat Pokemon. Attributes, Poison, Flying. Features, Psychic, possessing a trained spirit, not afraid of intimidation, and not shrinking from attacks. Piercing, can attack through the opponent's barriers and stands. Level 16/level 16. Exclusive moves, none. Mastered moves, Drain, Ultrasonic, Scare, Black Eyes, Poison Fang. Race value, 245, Health 40, Attack 45, Defense 35, Special Attack 30, Special Defense 40, Speed 55, Intimacy, 0, Status, Normal. Information summary, extremely hates sunlight, because the skin will be easily sunburnt. It has no eyes, but relies on ultrasonic waves to detect the surrounding situation and fly. At the same time, the frequency of ultrasonic waves will vary depending on each race. A level 16 Zubat. After all, it is normal for Zubat to appear in such a dark place. Moreover, although he can't see each other's eyes, Qingliu knows that the two Zubats are staring at them, or rather, staring at Agumon. Perhaps because they had never seen a Pokemon like Agumon, they did not take the initiative to attack. Agumon, get ready for battle, Qingliu reminded softly. On the way here, Qingliu carefully asked Xiaosong about the rules of the Lost Tower. In the center of each floor of the Lost Tower, there is an upward passage. As long as you can enter the next floor through the passage, you will pass the level. And because there is a contract between Random Town and the Pokemon of the Lost Tower, the Pokemon of the Lost Tower will take the initiative to guard the passage and try their best to prevent humans and Pokemon from passing through the passage. Of course, it's not that no one has tried other methods, such as using Pokemon that master thick fog or black fog to confuse the line of sight and sneak to the passage, but without exception, all failed, and they would be beaten by the Pokemon on the upper and lower passages. In short, the rule is that you need to use a Pokemon to defeat all the Pokemon on the floor before you can go to the next floor unhindered. But Qingliu didn't plan to do this. After all, letting Agumon fight Pokemon and win and gain experience points is also part of the plan. However, if you focus on fighting and winning, there is no such thing as a fair challenge. It doesn't matter whether you attack by surprise or not. As long as you can cause the opponent to lose people, you will reduce the pressure on yourself invisibly. Agumon, use small flames in that direction. Agumon, who is always on standby, opened his mouth suddenly, and two small flames flew out in a row, crossing the dim room and shooting directly at the two upside-down figures. The two Zubats obviously did not expect Qingliu to suddenly ask Agumon to attack, or in other words, they did not think that they would be exposed without actively attacking. Caught off guard, a Zubat had no time to react before the small flames hit it. The surging flames suddenly erupted, and the Zubat was instantly charred all over, falling straight from the hanging rod. Agumon followed up with sharp claws to defeat it. The other one relied on its own reaction to forcefully twist its body a little and barely avoided the small flames that flew over. But even so, its back was also hit by the flames, and all its hair was evaporated, and a burning pain bloomed on its back. This intense stinging feeling was not pleasant. The Zubat made a sharp cry, turned around and looked at Qingliu angrily, then flapped its wings and began to fly around the room, trying to use the dim light to continue to conceal its figure. This trick had been tried and tested many times before, and the results were very rich, but unfortunately, this time it encountered Qingliu with a panel and Agumon who fired moves like crazy. Agumon, small flame in front of the left. With the exploration of the panel, Qingliu easily captured the position of Zubat in its flight trajectory. After careful observation and finding the pattern, Qingliu directly predicted the direction of Zubat's attack. Almost at the moment Qingliu spoke, a fireball quickly ignited and flew in the direction pointed by Qingliu. The Zubat seemed to take the initiative to touch porcelain, and it hit Agumon's small flame straight. Then, it was a second small flame to make up for it. Boom! A slight landing sound was heard, and the second Zubat directly lost its combat ability. Well done! Qingliu threw out an energy cube and praised Agumon's quick reaction speed. With the increase of combat experience and the more time they spent together, Agumon understood his instructions faster. Although he was a little nervous in daily life, he was surprisingly alert when he entered the combat state. Such a scene was a little hard to accept for the other Pokemon hiding in the shadows. You know, when facing the challengers in the past few days, these two Zubats have defeated more than a handful of trainers and Pokemon in the dark environment, and they have always maintained their own state in a very good state with a move of Absorb. But now, in less than half a minute, or even a few blinks of an eye, before they had time to react whether to help, the two Zubats were killed in seconds? Who are these two guys? Exclamation mark. Chapter 37, Agumon, the Dream Demon Buster. The same thing happened 5 days ago. They met a blonde girl with a Dragon-type Pokémon. Unexpectedly, 5 days later, they met a boy with a Dragon-type Pokémon again. Will failure happen again? Impossible, absolutely impossible. They were extremely angry about their previous failures, and decided not to hide anymore. They showed up to give these two guys a hard time and take revenge for what happened 5 days ago. It didn't matter whether Qingliu was Sharona or not. They thought it was fine. Looking at the three Pokémon that appeared in front of him so carelessly, Qingliu was a little surprised. He was just thinking about what method he needed to use to stimulate the remaining Pokémon to come out after dealing with the two Zubats. After all, if they just hid and refused to come out, even if he had a panel to find their location, it would still be troublesome to defeat them. But this is the first time I've seen a ghost-type Pokémon since I came to this world. Qingliu looked at the dark green Pokémon in front of him, wandering around like ghosts. The green and red hair on their heads dragged behind their heads like will-o'-the-wisp. The most conspicuous thing was the red Buddhist beads hanging around their necks. Race: Dream Monster. Dream Monster. Dream Monster. Classification: Nightcry Pokémon. Attribute: Ghost. Feature: Float. 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 Level: 16. Exclusive moves: None. Mastered moves: Telekinesis, Fright, Strange Light. Call: Telekinesis, Fright. Telekinesis, Fright, Strange Light. Black Eyes. Race value: 435, horsepower 60, attack 60, defense 60, special attack 85, special defense 85, speed 85, intimacy, -20, dissatisfied with you and Agumon, X3, status, normal, information summary, always hides in the dark, likes to make strange noises to scare others, or suddenly pulls and bites other people's hair. When someone is afraid, the red beads on the neck of the Dream Demon will emit a strange light and absorb the fear. But if they encounter a brave person or Pokémon, their best methods will lose their effect. Qingliu looked at the information on the panel, and his expression gradually became tense. If I encounter a brave person or Pokémon, he is not small in courage, but not very brave either. However, there is a guy who is very brave. Qingliu's eyes fell on the Agumon next to him. At this time, it was staring at the three dream demons flying around like ghosts above its head. There was no fear in it, but more curiosity. Even if this Agumon did not have the courage badge to prove it, just considering the two characteristics of being a thick-skinned man and a reckless man, I am afraid that even if a real ghost came, the first thing it would do would not be to run away, but to rush up and fight. Afraid? You have to have the concept of fear to be afraid. These dream demons just met their nemesis. Qingliu couldn't help but sigh. The dream monsters also felt something was wrong. Usually, when the three of them suddenly appeared out of nowhere, both humans and Pokémon would feel more or less scared, but today the situation was really different. The human behind was fine, but what was wrong with the yellow Pokémon in front of them? They were very sensitive to negative emotions, but they didn't feel the slightest fear from this guy. This was totally unreasonable. Since scaring alone didn't work, the three dream monsters decided to bite directly. With sharp screams, the three dream monsters rushed towards Agumon from three directions. Aoyagi, can I burn these guys with fire? Agumon turned around and pointed at his head and arm helplessly. Two dream monsters opened their mouths and bit Agumon's head, and the third bit Agumon's arm, with a very sinister expression on their faces, which made people feel a little scared at a glance. But Agumon seemed to be unable to see this scene, and scratched his face awkwardly with his claws, asking Aoyagi for his opinion. And based on what Qingliu has learned about it over the past few days, Agumon, who has a slight mysophobia, may not be afraid of their scaring methods, but may be dissatisfied with the saliva flowing out when they bite him. Okay, small flame, Qingliu said. Seeing Qingliu nod, Agumon no longer hesitated and directly sprayed a fireball at the dream monster that bit its arm. Facing the attack, the dream monster immediately opened its mouth, let out a sharp roar, and dodged the small flame in a few floating moments. Seeing this, the other two also distanced themselves from Agumon, and then the three of them stood side by side, looking down at Agumon, and a burst of creepy screams came out of their mouths at the same time. Agumon, who was the first to bear the brunt, did not seem to be frightened at all, and did not shrink back. He directly raised his claws and started to fight back. Instead, Qingliu, who was standing behind, was startled by the sudden sound. You're so far away that you're frightened. Qingliu silently distanced himself from the beast and gave Agumon an order, use small flames continuously. Fireballs shot out of Agumon's mouth one after another, shooting at the three dream monsters. Facing the attack, the dream monsters' light bodies floated unsteadily, dodging all the small flames by dodging left and right. And after dodging, their figures hide around, and then suddenly appeared to scare Agumon. No wonder those trainers were annihilated on the first floor. Even if they lost their biggest attack method when facing Agumon, which has no fear, they can still counterattack with their strange speed. Qingliu looked at the three dream monsters' dodging movements and the information on the panel, and quickly analyzed. Although the dream monsters were much lower in speed ability than Xiaosong's previous, the dream monsters' almost negligible weight made their movements more flexible and agile. One side attacked and the other side dodged, one side counterattacked and the other side was immune, and the situation gradually entered a dead loop. However, as the battle between Agumon and the three dream demons gradually moved to the corner, the stalemate ended. Agumon rushed to the left corner. Agumon retracted his claws, jumped back to distance himself, and ran in the direction specified by Qingliu. The three dream demons looked at each other and hurried to follow, preparing their moves to attack. Two strange lights flickering and a blue beam of telekinesis shot straight at Agumon's back. Agumon did not have any intention of stopping, but instead accelerated and rushed towards the wall. Use the corner as a stepping stone, rush up the wall and get close to the dream demon to use a small flame. Qingliu's voice fell, and Agumon moved at the sound, leaping up and stepping on the left wall, and then stepping on the right wall. By the time the dream demon felt something was wrong and stopped moving forward, Agumon's body had completely turned over, with a wisp of flame lingering in his mouth. Chapter 38 Clearing the First Level. The leading dream demon chirped and was about to lead the retreat, but Agumon had already stepped on the ceiling and charged in front of them. There was no time to react at all, so it could only leave its companions behind and retreat. Qingliu was surprised to see that there was actually one that reacted so quickly, but he did not stop talking. Agumon used small flames on the dream demons on the left and right. Before he finished speaking, two fireballs were already shot out. The two dream demons that reacted a little slower were instantly engulfed by the fireballs and smoke, and flew back in pain, looking like they were seriously injured. Agumon, just finish the attack, don't stop. It was not easy to seize the opportunity with the help of the corner of the wall, but Qingliu was not satisfied if it was just an injury instead of a defeat. Agumon's body flipped over and fell to the ground, forcing its head up, and one fireball after another was fired at the two dream demons that had just been hit by the small flames. With two screams of pain, the dream demon fell from the air before it could react. Agumon also turned his body just before falling to the ground, barely landing steadily. At this moment, the dream demon who had escaped suddenly appeared in front of Agumon, and a pair of soul-stirring, huge black eyes that seemed to be spinning non-stop were imprinted on the face of Agumon, who had just raised his head. General type of moves, black eyes. Through the fascinating eyes, the opponent is afraid to lose the ability to escape. For the dream demon, this is its most critical and strongest move. As long as it successfully hits and makes the opponent feel pressured and dare not escape, the seeds of fear have been planted, and then it will slowly enter its rhythm. But what it didn't expect was that the yellow-skinned Pokemon, who had been stared at by the black eyes, did not react at all, but directly slapped it with a claw, which scared it to dodge. Ordinary scary moves and scare moves are useless, but now even the black eyes can't produce any effect? The dream demon is a little suspicious of the monster. But Qingliu is a gentle person, and will not give the dream demon time to doubt himself, and directly let Agumon take advantage of this time to attack. Another small flame flew out, breaking the dream demon's hasty telekinesis. After hitting the dream demon's body, 10 consecutive small flames were added directly, making it completely lose its combat ability. After confirming that the opponent was not pretending to be fainted, Agumon squatted down and stretched out his claws to poke the dream demon's body. Qingliu, it's really not a ghost, it's a Pokemon with a body. I said it a long time ago. But knowing it is knowing, it's the first time he has seen a real ghost Pokemon, and it's a cute dream demon. So Qingliu couldn't resist his curiosity and reached out to feel the touch of the dream demon's entity. But before Qingliu could experience it too much, Agumon suddenly stood up and stood quietly in place, and a strong aura gradually appeared on its body. Qingliu thought of something and quickly opened the panel. Level 15 Level 16 After defeating 2 Level 16 Zubats, 2 Level 16 Dream Demons, and a Level 17 Dream Demon, Agumon successfully broke through to Level 16 and sprinted straight towards Level 17. It's really still this fast to level up. Qingliu said with some sigh. Agumon, who had just reached level 15 less than half a day ago, has leveled up again. This leveling speed made him more interested in the second and third floors of the Lost Tower. With each floor, the Pokemon inside is stronger, and the more experience is gained after the battle is won, and the faster the level of Agumon is upgraded. Although with Agumon's current strength, it may not be able to beat the Pokemon on the 4th and 5th floors, it is still certain to reach the 2nd and 3rd floors. But we can't be careless. Even if the dream monster is restrained by Agumon's boldness, it is still at a higher level after all. The characteristics of ghost-type Pokemon are also very strange. Compared with Pokemon of other attributes, it is more difficult to deal with, so we must remain vigilant at all times. Qingliu came to the passage in the middle of the floor and scanned the surroundings with a panel. After confirming that there were no remaining Pokemon that would suddenly attack, he looked up at the surveillance above his head, turned around, put Agumon into the Poké Ball, and walked towards the 2nd floor. At the same time, outside the Lost Tower. After half an hour, there was no movement in the Lost Tower, which made the mayor, who had been waiting, change from impatience to expectation, and then back to impatience. How long has he been in there? The assistant beside him hurriedly checked his watch to confirm the time and replied, "It's been 20 minutes. What's the longest time he's been in there before?" On average, the first floor is about 16 minutes. Those who can pass the level have already passed it by this time, and those who can't pass the level have almost lost by this time, because the strongest Pokemon on the first floor is a dream demon that is good at teasing and absorbing negative emotions to strengthen itself. The assistant replied hurriedly. In other words, can it be considered that his challenge has failed? Yes, according to past experience, no trainer who has exceeded 16 minutes and around 18 minutes has succeeded. That means I wasted 20 minutes in vain. After the mayor finished this sentence without any emotional fluctuations, he sat down expressionlessly. The assistant, who knew the mayor's character, saw this scene and knew that after the failures of the past few days and the current juncture, he was on the verge of exploding. He straightened his back and prepared to slip to the side to let the reporters be more discerning and not interfere with Miss Xiaosong's state of challenge. If Miss Xiaosong failed in the challenge after waiting for 20 minutes in vain, the mayor would not say it openly, but he would definitely be furious when he returned, and all the civil servants in the town would have a hard time. And a few reporters who had consulted Xiaosong also found that Qingliu had not come out for such a long time. They knew the unspoken rule that the longer they stayed, the lower the success rate, and they all sighed. Even if they did not have any expectations for Qingliu, they still longed for a miracle to save their news reports. But now it seems that this miracle is impossible to happen, and the last hope can only be placed on Xiaosong. After dealing with the questions of the reporters, Xiaosong looked at the Lost Tower with some uneasiness. According to Qingliu and Agumon's abilities, they should have no problem clearing the first floor. How come there is still no movement after such a long time? As someone who has challenged the Lost Tower, Xiaosong naturally knows the unspoken rule of time in the Lost Tower. It is precisely because of this that she is even more worried. Could it be that they encountered some unexpected situation when they first entered? Especially when time was still passing by and there was no sign of Qingliu on the surveillance camera in the corridor, Xiaosong couldn't help but sigh. The reporters who had finished the interview were discussing whether to leave. The mayor on the side began to become emotionally unstable. He was even worried that something had happened to Qingliu and was preparing to organize people to go in and check. The figure of Qingliu appeared on the surveillance camera at the staircase. Chapter 39, the second floor of the Lost Tower. In order to protect the privacy of the Pokemon buried long ago in the Lost Tower and some trainers who challenged the Lost Tower, there are no surveillance cameras installed on each floor of the Lost Tower. There are only surveillance cameras in the passages on each floor to ensure that the challengers can be observed whether they have passed the level. At this time, in the surveillance screen of the passage from the first floor to the second floor, Qingliu's figure slowly appeared and strode towards the second floor. Is this successfully passing the first floor? The assistant, who had already assumed that Qingliu's challenge had failed and was about to enter the Lost Tower, was a little unresponsive for a while. Being able to appear on the screen can prove that I have indeed passed the level, but how is this possible? As the assistant to the mayor, he is responsible for the relevant matters of the Lost Tower when the mayor is not convenient or does not want to go out. Because of this, He is very familiar with many problems of the Lost Tower and even what Pokemon are on each floor. Among the challengers in the past few years, no one has stayed in the first floor for more than 18 minutes, or even more than 20 minutes and still been able to pass the level. Because there are 2 Zubats on the first floor who are good at sucking blood and fighting a protracted battle, and the Dream Demon who also likes to fight a protracted battle and replenishes his physical strength by feeding on negative emotions. But now, someone has actually defeated these 3 Pokemon in a protracted battle? How did he do it? What Pokemon did he use? Could it be a Pokemon with low-end perpetual motion capabilities like Zubat and Ogre? Or, could it be a Ghost-type Pokemon? It is indeed possible. After all, no Pokemon was seen in the surveillance footage just now, but this kind of thing is not certain. But in terms of time alone, Qingliu has broken the record. The record of waiting the longest time and still passing the first level. The assistant was very shocked, and had always firmly believed that it was impossible to happen. But the facts were in front of him, and he had to believe it now even if he didn't believe it. And, if someone has passed the level now, the mayor's anger should be much less? The assistant turned around and looked at the mayor. The mayor was squinting his eyes, with a warm smile on his face, standing tall not far away, and at first glance, he seemed to be a very amiable uncle next door. He no longer had the cold and aloof temperament that he had shown before, and even his protruding belly had disappeared. The sudden contrast made the assistant feel a little uncomfortable. Mayor. The mayor's voice sounded like a spring breeze. What are you still standing there for? Why don't you go and notify the 2 media outlets in the town to prepare for tomorrow's news? By the way, take the first level clearance reward with you, and give it directly to that gentleman later. Ah. Okay. The assistant quickly released the doodooly, sat on its back and ran towards the town. After so many years, there has been no improvement. Looking at the assistant's back as he left, the mayor shook his head in disappointment. Without his foresight to judge the situation, how long would it take for him to become a master? On the other side, the sharp-eyed and quick-handed reporters also discovered this information. Before their brains could react, their bodies had already taken action. They quickly picked up the microphone and carried the camera, directly abandoned Xia Song, rushed to the public channel surveillance outside the Lost Tower, and began to film and make comments on their own. Some of them were squeezed so tightly that there was no space for filming. The tall reporter who stayed behind seemed to have suddenly thought of something and hurriedly ran back to Xia Song with the camera. Excuse me, Miss Xia Song, is the gentleman who went in before your friend? From being surrounded by reporters to now having only one person around her, and the questions were still irrelevant to her, Xia Song couldn't help but sigh with a wry smile. However, she did not feel jealous of Qingliu because of this sudden change, but was more happy for Qingliu to pass the level. Even if she knew the strength of Qingliu and Agumon, she couldn't help but think that they failed after watching them stay in there for so long. Now Qingliu's figure appeared in the passage, proving that he passed the level successfully. She was sincerely relieved, at least her expectations of him were met. Can I ask the name of that gentleman? Is he your boyfriend, Miss Xia Song? Hearing this question that was obviously creating a topic, Xia Song knew that she couldn't react in a panic, otherwise it would be forcibly interpreted as another meaning. So he calmly shook his head and replied, his name is Qingliu, and we are just ordinary friends. I brought him here because he is interested in the Lost Tower. Seeing that Xia Song did not accept the challenge, the tall reporter threw out the next question. How does Mr. Qingliu compare to Miss Xia Song? Is he stronger? After all, he was able to clear the first floor after more than 20 minutes. Miss Xia Song, can you tell me whether Mr. Qingliu's goal is to clear the entire Lost Tower like Miss Sirona? Qingliu is much stronger than me. As for his goal, he has not told me, but if he clears the first floor, I believe his goal has been achieved. Faced with Xia Song who answered fluently, the tall reporter who could not find any flaws suddenly fell silent, and finally had to set his sights on Xia Song. Miss Xia Song said that Mr. Qingliu is stronger than you. Can you give me a specific idea of how much stronger he is? Xia Song's mouth froze immediately. How much stronger than me? How should I answer this question? I can't tell you that I have never fought 3 against 1, which is extremely shameful, right? Sorry, this is personal privacy, no comment. Then may I ask if Mr. Qingliu's Pokemon was not seen in the surveillance just now? Is it a ghost-type Pokemon that can turn invisible? Or is it a relatively rare Pokemon? Miss Xia Song, please reveal some information. the reporter asked. Xiaosong was speechless again. These reporters always find sensitive questions among many questions. No wonder my father didn't like these guys to appear in the gym when he was still in Qifeng City. Sorry, this is personal privacy, no comment. Xiaosong said, without giving the tall reporter a chance to reply, pointing to the surveillance screen on the other side and said, the position over there is vacant. If you don't go now, it will be occupied later. While people were discussing outside the Lost Tower, Qingliu had already walked through the passage and came to the second floor of the Lost Tower. The surroundings were still as cold as a cemetery, accompanied by a faint but very easy to distinguish sweet fragrance. When he smelled this fragrance, Qingliu thought of a certain Pokémon. When he opened the Agumon Poké Ball, the panel began to search the surroundings. Soon, 3 smoke-filled, black spherical figures with large white eyes and a pair of sharp teeth in their wide-open mouths rushed towards them. Agumon, front and right, use small flame. Chapter 40 Ghastly Small Explosion. Got it. As the Poké Ball opened, a flash of red light passed by. Agumon just appeared and opened his mouth to shoot 3 small flames at the 3 figures that attacked. Facing the attack, the 3 figures paused and dodged to the side with an extremely agile movement, avoiding the small flames that shot at their faces. The same dodging action as the Dream Demon. But I have been prepared for this move of yours. Use small flames continuously. If you are poor, you can strike accurately. If you are rich, you can cover with firepower. Agumon was already able to shoot 13 small flames in a row at the beginning. Now that his level and physical fitness have been comprehensively improved, he can easily shoot 20 small flames in one breath. Bowl-sized fireballs shot out from Agumon's mouth one after another, directly covering the surrounding space in all directions without dead angles, and covering the 3 sneak-attacking figures. The opponent obviously did not expect Qingliu and Agumon to suddenly come up with such a move, and hurriedly used their own means to resist. Bang! 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 Small flames exploded one after another. 3 figures blocked the attack in front of them, but were affected by the aftermath of the fireball explosion next to them, and their bodies were unstable. Agumon, charge forward, sharp claws. Orange energy instantly covered the claws, and as Agumon jumped up, it grabbed one of the figures heavily. Kauji! The other party exclaimed, and his body seemed to turn into nothingness and floated backwards a long way. The sharp claws grabbed nothing. At the same time, information about them was also displayed in front of him. Race, Ghastly Garstly. Classification, Gas Pokemon. Attributes, Ghost, Poison. Features, Float. Level, 171718. Exclusive moves, none. Mastered moves, Strange Light, Licking, Hypnotism, Black Eyes, Tooth for Tooth. Strange Light, Licking, Hypnotism, Black Eyes. Strange Light, Licking, Black Eyes, Tooth for Tooth. Resentment, Acid Bomb. Race value, 310, horsepower 30, attack 35, defense 30, special attack 100, special defense 35, speed 80, intimacy 0, no feelings for UX3, status, normal. Information summary, it is said that this Pokemon is a mixture of poisonous gas and soul, so its body is gaseous and difficult to touch. Because of this, it is sometimes blown away by strong winds. It will use its special body structure to cover the opponent and inject toxins through the skin to make the opponent weak. Horizontal ellipsis. Because it's gas, we have to use a move to attack it, and there's another thing to note, except for the level 18 Ghastly, the other 2 Ghastlies have hypnosis in their moves, and he doesn't have anything that can wake up Agumon. We must find a way to get rid of the 2 Ghastlies first, and nip the possibility of using hypnosis in the bud. We can only use that one move. Qingliu saw this scene and thought quickly based on the information on the panel. Agumon, don't use sharp claws without my order, and continue with small flame. Agumon also realized that the attack just now failed not only because the opponent's movements were flexible, but also because his body looked a bit ghostly, so he gave up the claws and continued the fireball bombardment. The 2 Ghastlies made strange noises, and their bodies switched between illusion and reality, spewing out strange colored light from their mouths to block the flying fireballs. The highest level Ghastly dodged and crossed the distance directly, flew in front of Agumon, grinned and his eyes instantly turned dark and deep, and were directly imprinted on Agumon. It was the same move that the Nightmare used when he resisted in the end, the Black Gaze. Unfortunately, this move was useless to Agumon. Agumon did not intend to escape, Nor did he have any fear or shrinking emotions, but directly chose to condense flames in his mouth. Such a reaction made Ghastly, who had just used the black gaze, a little confused. Shouldn't he be scared? Why is it different from the guys who were hit before? Agumon, sorry, it's really different. I'm a Digimon wearing a Pokemon skin. It's rude not to reciprocate. Agumon, charge the flame. Qingliu's deliberately raised voice immediately attracted Ghastly's attention. Coupled with the flames in Agumon's mouth, and thinking of the previous fireball covering attack, Ghastly quickly hid in the wall next to him, trying to make Agumon lose his target. But what it didn't expect was that Qingliu's initial target was not it, but the other two Ghastlys. The blazing flames were brewing in Agumon's mouth. The other two Ghastlys hadn't figured out why the first Ghastly had suddenly run away. While they were still wondering, Aowagi's voice rang out again. Agumon, use small blast. A huge fireball had already hit their faces at a speed far beyond their size. Boom! A roar suddenly sounded in the air, and then a heat wave swept across the entire second floor with a terrifying trend. The scorching breath directly melted all the yin-ki nearby. Kauji! The strongest Ghastly was floating on the ceiling, looking at the scene in a daze. It didn't seem to be affected by the black gaze at all, so what was this sudden terrifying attack? Then, it saw that from the center of the flame explosion, two Ghastlys that had been burned by the high temperature and whose surface gas had been evaporated by more than half fell from the air to the ground, their eyes closed, as if they had lost their fighting power. Well done, Agumon. With the attributes that did not restrain each other, Agumon killed two level 17, more difficult ghost-type Ghastlys with a small explosion. Aowagi was very satisfied with the damage caused by the small explosion. And judging from the burning flames, the power was more than that. The only pity was that the three Ghastlys were not on the same position, so they could not be killed at the same time. However, compared to the level 18 Ghastlys, Aowagi was more concerned about hypnosis. This current move would be very troublesome if there were not enough means in the real world, especially for him and Agumon now, the threat was too great. So Aowagi let Agumon come up and release the small explosion, which was very physically demanding, just in order to reduce Agumon's physical burden as much as possible in the shortest time and at the best physical state. Now that these two hidden dangers have been removed, there is only one Ghastly that does not have an advantage in attributes. As long as you pay a little attention, it is not a problem to take it down. Agumon, are you still okay? Qingliu looked at Agumon, who was panting, and asked. No problem, I can continue. Agumon waved his hand, took a long breath, suppressed his fluctuating chest, and stared at the only remaining Ghastly on the opposite side. Okay, two small flames to clear the way, and then rush up and use sharp claws. Qingliu gave the order, and Agumon responded immediately. Chapter 41 Continuous Upgrades. After seeing two of its companions being killed in an instant, the remaining 18th level Ghastly put away all its playfulness and devoted itself to the battle with extraordinary concentration. It dodged two small flames in succession, then fought back with a tooth-for-tooth attack to resist Agumon's sharp claws, and launched a counterattack after charging up. Agumon, who was knocked out, continued to spray small flames in the air, while Ghastly spit out a bunch of white smoke and corrosive liquid from his mouth. Qingliu took a glance and identified it as a poison-type move, Acid Bomb. Run, don't get hit by that thing. Qingliu didn't need to say that Agumon didn't want to be hit by this thing either. It was spitting, and it looked poisonous, which was really a bit disgusting. Agumon took a step forward, moving around, dodging all the acid bombs that could be dodged, and offsetting the ones that couldn't be dodged with small flames, and then launched a blanket counterattack. After dodging the acid bomb again, Aowagi stood up and several small flames flew out. Aowagi's eyes fell on the running Agumon, and his expression became serious. Although the situation was evenly matched now, and Agumon even had the upper hand with his strong physical fitness, Aowagi also found some problems. Even if it is upgraded, Agumon's physical strength will drop greatly after using the small explosion. If we continue to stalemate like this, we will lose. The battle must be ended in one blow, and now the only move Agumon can do is the small explosion. The second small explosion. After using it, the physical strength will be exhausted, but there is no other way at this point. One level is one level. Aowagi asked Agumon to save his physical strength from now on, try not to use moves, and try to minimize the consumption while conducting guerrilla warfare to wear down Ghastly's patience. Finally, after 5 minutes, Ghastly, who had been pulled to the point of being furious, chose to attack head-on, stretched out his tongue to use tongue licking, and took the opportunity to get closer. Aoyagi commanded Agumon to use the small explosion. Hoo hoo hoo. Agumon sat on the ground with a tired look, and even the breathing rhythm that had stabilized during the previous training was completely disordered at this moment. After using 2 small explosions in the same battle, Agumon's physical strength has reached its limit. If it weren't for the energy blocks given by Qingliu, I'm afraid he would have collapsed to the ground at this time. How do you feel? Qingliu asked while using the healing spray. Very tired. I feel tingling all over my body, but it's still within the tolerance range, and besides the energy blocks, it seems that something else is restoring my physical strength. After swallowing a few energy blocks, Agumon took a deep breath and replied. That's because your level has increased again. In the panel that only Qingliu can see, Agumon's level has changed. Level 16 Level 17 After defeating 2 Level 17 Ghastlies and 1 Level 18 Ghastly, the rich experience points gained once again played a role, allowing Agumon to improve. This feeling is very subtle, and the usual sweat in the hard battle just now seemed to have all come back in another way at this moment. Agumon, take a short break. Let's go to the 3rd floor and collect some information about the Pokemon guarding the floor to prepare for our next visit. After Qingliu finished speaking, Agumon did not respond. Instead, he asked, Qingliu, how many energy cubes do you have? There are still 10. What's wrong? Give them all to me. Qingliu paused, looked at Agumon and asked, what do you want to do? I feel that my physical strength is slowly recovering after the level is increased. If I eat some more energy cubes, I can recover to a level where I can fight normally. Agumon stared at Qingliu with his big green eyes. Qingliu did not reply immediately, but stared at Agumon. The improved comprehensive physical fitness after upgrading will indeed restore physical strength, and eating energy cubes will also restore physical strength, but both of them need time to digest. It is not that after upgrading and eating, the blood will be restored instantly like in the game. If this is true, I am afraid that there will be a short boy carrying a cart of tree fruits to challenge the Lost Tower. Even if Agumon is different from ordinary Pokemon, it is not so fast. Qingliu wanted to refuse, but Agumon's eyes were firm, which reminded him of what happened before. Because he could quickly become stronger in the Lost Tower, Agumon should think that he should become as strong as possible before completely losing his fighting ability. If he refused, Agumon would definitely listen to him, but Qingliu opened the panel, scanned Agumon and his eyes fell on the status bar. Status, weak recovering. It is estimated that it will take 12 hours to recover to full strength and 1 hour to recover to normal state. It takes 1 hour to recover to normal state. With the help of energy blocks, the time can indeed be shortened. In addition, the Lost Tower does not stipulate the length of time, so 1 hour is indeed possible. Looking at the information given on the panel and Agumon's eager eyes, Qingliu sighed and said, it's okay, but you must listen to me in this matter in the future. You can't act on your own. This is the second and last time. Okay. Agumon agreed directly. Qingliu reluctantly handed all the remaining energy cubes to Agumon, and at the same time used healing spray to clean up the injuries on Agumon's body, trying to make it recover as much as possible. Half an hour later, Qingliu used the Poké Ball to take back Agumon, who had recovered most of his energy, and came to the 3rd floor. After seeing that the Pokemon on the 3rd floor were a level 19 Murkrow, a level 18 Incubus, and a level 18 Ghastly, Qingliu directly summoned Agumon to fight. Because of the level increase again, Agumon's speed is faster, the attack is more fierce, and the power of its moves has also been significantly improved. With these, plus the search function and command of Qingliu's panel, even if Agumon has not recovered to its peak state, the situation remains at a very stable level. Then, Qingliu once again chose Ghastly, who had mastered Hypnosis, as a breakthrough point, and used the same trick to use a small explosion to kick Ghastly out of the battle. At the same time, he quickly defeated the Nightmare, who had just been hit on the back by the small explosion, causing inconvenience in movement and a great reduction in speed. In the end, he paid the price of having Agumon's arm injured by the attack of Murkrow's wings, grabbed Murkrow's wings, and used the second small explosion face-to-face to pass the 3rd level. At the moment the battle ended, Agumon's level achieved a major breakthrough with the experience points of the 3 battles, jumping from level 17 to level 19. This was originally good news, but Qingliu was not happy. Because he discovered something that might have an impact on his previous plan. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42, The Fourth Floor. In the previous battle, it should have been more difficult for Agumon to win. In other words, Agumon, who had not recovered to his peak state, would not have won. At most, it would have been a draw. But Agumon not only won, but also won a little easier than on the second floor. At least after the battle, Agumon could still stand and talk. And the reasons for this series of events. Qingliu raised his head and looked up, which was the location of the fourth floor of the Lost Tower. He was silent for a long time. Time passed by minute, and Qingliu kept looking up. Until 5 or 6 minutes passed. Bang! Dong! Bang! Ling! There were violent collisions and roars one after another. After a while, these sounds gradually weakened and then disappeared. It was these strange sounds that made the 3 Pokémon on the third floor look very unstable. Even in the battle where they should be highly focused, they often fell into some kind of fear or dread. Even the first Ghastly that was defeated had a chance to dodge the attack, but at that time, a strange sound happened to sound above its head, and it was distracted for a moment, resulting in it being hit by a small explosion and defeated. The other 2 were also affected to varying degrees, and were finally defeated by Agumon in one fell swoop. According to the situation on the first 2 floors, the level of the Pokémon on the 4th floor is only 1 or 2 levels higher than that on the 3rd floor. Even if there is a gap in strength, there is no need to be so frightened. Moreover, if they are dissatisfied with each other and fighting each other, the people of Random Town should not allow such a serious impact on the Lost Tower to happen. So, what made them feel scared? The result was that just some sounds seriously interfered with their battle with Agumon? What powerful Pokémon? Or some special and difficult existence? Whether it is the former or the latter, it will affect his plan. Maybe it won't affect it now, but next time he challenges, he will definitely face the opponent directly. If he can collect some information in advance now, it will definitely be helpful later, but now is obviously not the time to go up and check it directly. Agumon had just experienced a big battle, and his physical strength was at the bottom. If he really encountered a violent Pokémon, he might not be able to escape. Therefore, Qingliu decided to wait for Agumon to recover his physical strength before quietly going up to check the situation. With a leap of 2 levels, Agumon's body recovered faster, and coupled with the energy blocks that had not been digested in his stomach, Agumon's physical strength was gradually recovering. However, for the sake of safety, Qingliu rested for more than 2 hours this time. After seeing that Agumon's status on the panel was close to normal, he began to act and walked very carefully through the 3rd floor passage to the 4th floor. When his figure appeared in the 3rd floor passage, the reporters outside the Lost Tower took a breath of cold air. I actually even passed the 3rd level. 2.5 hours, after a full 2.5 hours, I actually passed it. It took me half an hour to pass the 1st level, more than an hour to pass the 2nd level, and more than 2 hours to pass the 3rd level. The time is getting longer and longer, and I actually managed to reach the 4th level. It's incredible. Before, none of the trainers could pass the 1st level, but now there is one who can pass all 3 levels. The reporters who had been waiting for several days without any results were filled with joy at this time. However, where there are people who are happy, there are also people who are sad. After receiving the news that Qingliu passed the 1st level, the reporters who hurried over from other places but did not get the first-hand information looked at Qingliu's figure, and some voices were heard. You should have brought a lot of healing sprays and energy blocks, otherwise you wouldn't have been able to last this long. You said that as if no trainer didn't bring any. Do those things work directly? As a reporter, you should practice more. Aren't you the one who cursed the most after waiting for 2 hours? If you say it doesn't work, just get out and don't waste everyone's time in there. What the hell are you talking about? Get out of here. Hey, don't do it. Compared to the tense atmosphere of the reporters, the mayor of Sui Town was extremely quiet. From the moment Qingliu passed the 1st floor, his face was full of smiles. He thought that this investment was doomed to lose all his money, but he didn't expect Qingliu to suddenly save the situation. In the spirit of minimizing losses and making profits, he no longer cared whether Qingliu could pass the 2nd floor. Passing the 1st floor was a gift from God to Sui Town. What he didn't expect was that Qingliu not only passed the first floor, but also passed the second floor right after that, and just now he passed the third floor. The smile on his face became brighter and brighter. Even though it took Qingliu nearly 4 hours to pass the second and third floors, he did not complain at all. He stood quietly in the place where he could be seen as soon as he arrived at the Lost Tower. At this moment, Qingliu was the savior of Sui Town given by God, and his only hope to turn the town into a city before retirement. Just standing here and experiencing a little wind and frost was nothing. He still had to wait for Qingliu to come out and reward him well. Thinking of this, the mayor suddenly seemed to have thought of something and picked up his mobile phone to dial a number. Hello. Yes, it's me. Are you on the way now? Is that so? Well, then, you run another trip and go back to bring back the reward for passing the third floor. Yes, that's right, you must be faster. If you keep the gentleman waiting for a long time, you can just not come back. At this time, several kilometers away from the Lost Tower, the assistant who had already run 4 times and was ordered to run the 5th and 6th trips looked at the 3 heads under his butt fighting for dominance and sighed helplessly. Alice, life is not easy, the assistant sighed. Not far from the Lost Tower, Xia Song, who was sitting on a bench with Qingliu, was eating. When he saw Qingliu's figure appear, he couldn't help but show a shocked expression on his face. I thought the second floor was your limit, but I didn't expect that you not only passed the second floor, but also the third floor. Could it be that he didn't try his best when he was won Vote 3 before? No. Qingliu was also staring at the monitoring screen in surprise. As one of the Pokemon that Xia Song challenged the Lost Tower, it naturally knew how terrifying Qingliu's current level was. Although it takes longer and longer, I always have a feeling of steady progress. If I continue at this pace, maybe the 4th floor can be achieved. Xia Song had some ideas in his mind. Although she also knew that the chance was small, maybe Qingliu could really achieve it. And once he passed the 4th floor, it would be the 5th floor that only one person had passed so far. Chapter 43 The Weak 4th Layer. If Qingliu knew that Xia Song had the idea of clearing the 4th and 5th floors, or even rivaling Serona, he would be happy for this trust. But now he didn't know, and he didn't have time to think about it. Agumon, did you find anything wrong? Qingliu was standing in the blind spot of the surveillance of the passage from the 3rd floor to the 4th floor, and asked Agumon who had just come out of the Poké Ball next to him. Agumon closed his eyes, took a few deep breaths with his nose, and replied, except for an uncomfortable smell in the air, I didn't feel anything else. Same result. Qingliu frowned as he looked at the virtual panel in front of him. Whether it was the intuitive feeling or the information displayed on the panel, it was no different from what Agumon said. Except for the feeling of a strange smell in the air, the 4th floor was no different from the 3 floors he had already passed. The same cold cemetery atmosphere, the same poorly lit environment, and the same Pokemon guarding. But the sound just now was indeed transmitted from the 4th floor. He shouldn't have heard it wrong at such a close distance. Since he felt there was no problem, then what was the problem? No one could answer this question. However, in addition to humans, there were also Pokemon. Qingliu set his eyes on the 3 Pokemon guarding the 4th floor in the shadows in the corner. Their information was then displayed on the panel. Race, Incubus, classification, Nightcree Pokemon, attribute, ghost, feature, floats on the ground, so it will not be affected by ground attribute moves, level, 19/19, exclusive moves, none, mastered moves, telekinesis, fright, strange light, night shadow, hold on telekinesis, fright, black eyes, hold on, race value, 435, horsepower 60, attack 60, defense 60, special attack 85, special defense 85, speed 85, intimacy, 0, indifferent to you, x2, status, scared, extremely weak, recovering, x2, information summary, xxxxxxx. Race, Golbat, classification, bat Pokemon, attribute, poison, flying, feature, pierce, can pass through the opponent's barriers or stand to attack, level, 20, exclusive moves, none, mastered moves, screech, drain, fright, black eyes, quick defense, toxic fang, venom trap, race stats, 455, horsepower 75, attack 80, defense 70, special attack 65, special defense 75, Speed 90, Intimacy 0, no feelings towards you, Status, Afraid, Extremely weak, Recovering, Information Summary, it has a big mouth and sharp teeth that can bite through hard skin. It is specially evolved for sucking blood. It will actively attack humans and Pokemon at night. Sometimes it will give up flying and use its small and flexible legs to quickly approach the target. Extremely weak? Qingliu's eyes quickly scanned all the information on the panel, and finally stopped at the status bar that showed that the two Incubi and a Zubat were extremely weak. What happened to make them become this state? Or who beat them like this? I haven't heard of any other trainers who have reached the 4th floor except Serona and myself. And there are always people guarding and protecting the lost tower outside. It should be impossible for someone to directly skip the first 3 floors and run to the 4th floor to beat up the guarding Pokemon. Wouldn't it be better for someone with this ability to attack directly from the 1st floor? But now it has happened that the Pokemon on the first 3 floors are all in normal condition, while the Pokemon on the 4th floor are extremely weak. Qingliu felt more and more that the sounds he heard on the 3rd floor were the culprits of these things. But after coming up, he did not find any clues, or did it go upstairs? Qingliu looked up at the ceiling. At this time, a huge sound rang out above his head again. Dong. Bang. Gee. This sound is louder and clearer than the one he heard on the 3rd floor before, and if I heard it correctly, there are Pokemon roars in the middle. Qingliu waited quietly for a few seconds, and the sound gradually disappeared again. But this is enough, at least it can be confirmed that the guy who made the strange noise is on the 5th floor. Although I don't know how it got in, there is no 6th floor after the 5th floor, and it is impossible to leave quietly. In other words, as long as I go up one more floor, I can confirm the identity of the other party. But now, there may be a better way. If you want to know everything about something, besides witnessing it with your own eyes, the best way is to ask the person involved. Agumon, you can understand the Pokemon you met on the 3 floors below, right? Yes. Then, please go over and ask them what happened just now. It would be even better if you can get the specific information of the other party. Qingliu pointed to the 3 weak Pokemon hiding in the shadows on the opposite side and said, if he could know what happened from the 3 parties involved in the victim, and whether the other party was a human or a Pokemon, he would avoid the possibility of encountering the other party and getting into danger, and maximize the safety factor. Agumon also understood, and immediately ran over and began to ask one by one. Perhaps because they had no strength, or perhaps because they saw that Agumon had no intention of fighting, the 3 Pokemon including Zubat did not launch an attack, and even stayed where they were without moving, and did not even open their mouths. Of course, they did not speak to answer Agumon's questions. Only when Agumon mentioned the other party's information, the 3 Pokemon trembled involuntarily as if they thought of something that frightened them, and finally Agumon was rejected 3 times in a row. Aowagi, they seem a little scared. Forget it, it's just an attempt. In this case, we can only rely on ourselves. Then, Aowagi led Agumon to the passage leading to the 5th floor. But to Aowagi's surprise, their way forward was soon blocked. Looking at Zubat and 2 dream monsters that appeared in front of him and blocked the way, Aowagi frowned and said, although it is your task to guard the passage, you can't exert much combat power in your current state. Is it necessary to fight even so? Zubat and the dream monster didn't say anything, but just stood in front of Aowagi and Agumon with a determined look, and didn't mean to give way at all. Seeing that persuasion was useless, Aowagi had to decide to let Agumon fight. Chapter 44 The Source of the Strange Noise. The final result was beyond doubt. Even in his prime, Agumon had the possibility of winning, not to mention that Zubat and the 2 dream monsters in their extremely weak state could not use much effective dodge, let alone have extra energy to organize an attack. Although Agumon's current state was not very good, it was more than enough compared to the 3 of them. Agumon let out a long breath, barely suppressed his rapid breathing, and sat on the ground to rest. Although it was a sure win, Qingliu let Agumon finish the battle as soon as possible in order not to attract the attention of the source of the strange noise above his head. For this reason, Agumon's physical energy consumption increased a lot. But at the same time, there was also good news. Because Zubat and the 2 dream monsters took the initiative to initiate the battle, and even in a weak state, Agumon and them were fighting in a real way. Therefore, after defeating a level 20 and 2 level 19 monsters, Agumon's level, which was measured by experience points, was once again raised. Level 19 level 20 after brushing a dungeon in the wild, defeating Xiaosong in a 1v3 battle, and then challenging the Lost Tower. Until now he has cleared the 4th floor. Agumon's level has soared from level 13 to level 20, a full 7-level increase, which is undoubtedly a very fruitful progress. With this level of Agumon, relying on the comprehensive strength formed by multiple evolutions that is already stronger than the Pokémon of the same period, it can be said that it now has a certain self-protection ability. The only thing it lacks may be the diversity of moves. But now this problem will also be solved with a bonus obtained by clearing the Lost Tower. Although I don't know the specific amount, Qingliu guessed that it must be a lot. Take this money to buy some move-learning machines, so that Agumon is no longer limited to the exclusive moves of Digimon itself, but learns the diverse moves of the Pokémon world and becomes a true Digimon Pokémon. After suppressing the thoughts that gradually emerged in his head, Qingliu sprayed the healing spray on Agumon, looked at the remaining point, and the 3 Pokémon that fell beside him, and gave them a simple treatment by the way. After a while, Aowagi, I feel okay. Agumon, who had recovered some of his energy, stood up. Okay. Stepping over the 3 Pokémon that had not yet woken up, Aowagi came to the front of the passage, took out the Poké Ball and prepared to take Agumon back as before to avoid being caught by the surveillance camera, and then the reporter shook it all out in an instant. But just as he took it out, Agumon, who was originally a little tired, sniffed the air with his nose, as if he felt something, and his expression suddenly became serious. Aowagi, the uncomfortable smell I mentioned before has suddenly become stronger, and it seems to be approaching us. I understand. Aowagi's expression was also very solemn at this moment. Because since he entered the Lost Tower, in order to ensure that he would not be attacked by the Pokémon that was hiding, the panel that had been open all the time moved at this moment. This means that there are Pokémon nearby. But the Pokémon guard in the 4th floor are now all lying on the ground, and there seems to be a strict division of labor between the Pokémon on each floor, and they will not cross the floors at will. So, what other Pokémon can get close at this time? There's only one answer, the guy who made the strange noise on the 5th floor. It's okay to run from the 4th floor to the 5th floor, but he actually came down again. Qingliu really didn't expect the other party's whereabouts to be so strange, and there was no logic at all in going back and forth. However, the only thing that can be confirmed is that this guy may be very strong, second only to the sharp-toothed land shark of Sharona, and Agumon may not be his opponent in normal state. Especially as the information on the panel became clearer and more, Qingliu saw the information. This confirmed this matter even more. Agumon, let's go. Not only can he not be defeated, but he is also a very difficult guy, and he already knows the other party's information. There is no need to stay and cause trouble for himself, just run away before the other party comes down. Although Agumon didn't know what Aowagi had discovered, the increasingly gloomy atmosphere in the air and the reaction formed by following Aowagi's command recently made it take action immediately, following Aowagi and running directly to the passage to the 3rd floor. However, many things are not as simple as imagined. After seeing that a faint mist began to appear around him, and even the sky outside the Lost Tower seen through the window began to have a hint of a storm, Aowagi knew that he probably couldn't escape. The next second, a shrill laugh sounded in his ears. Ch-ch-ch-ch-chi, g-g-g-g, ch-ch-ch-ch-chi. A faint light lit up in the mist. Aowagi squinted his eyes and saw that it was a piece of stone. A piece of stone with a few simple traces engraved on it, emitting red light, floating in the air. The whole stone was flying towards Aowagi and Agumon, and finally stopped a few meters away. Then, a bright red light suddenly burst out from the surface of the stone, and a ball of purple gas-like thing drilled out of the stone. At a glance, you can also see organs like mouth and eyes from this gaseous mass. At this moment, Qingliu knew that the other party was looking at him. The information about the other party was also completely revealed on the panel. Race, Flower Rock Monster, Classification, Sealed Pokémon, Attribute, Ghost, Evil, Features, Oppression, gives the opponent a sense of oppression, greatly reducing the number of moves used, Level 20, Exclusive Moves, None, Mastered Moves, Night Fiend, Strange Light, Shadow Sneak, Resentment, Tooth for Tooth, Trick, Same Fate, Race Value, 485, Horsepower 52, Attack 92, Defense 108, Special Attack 92, Special Defense 108, Speed 35, Intimacy, 0, I don't know you, Status, Manic, Painful and Angry, Information Summary, Flower Rock Monster is a Pokemon that was created 500 years ago by the gathering of 108 souls. It seems that there are souls with bad personalities mixed in it. It is an evil creature brought about by evil thoughts. It always did evil things, but one day, its body was bound to a keystone by a magical spell to prevent it from doing evil again. Looking at the guy in front of him, Qingliu couldn't help but sigh. It still didn't run away. He really didn't want to fight with such a guy. Although its level was the same as Agumon, the attribute combination and moves of the Flower Rock Monster were too disgusting. Before the 6th generation fairy attribute appeared, this guy was a very powerful existence. Because of the dual attributes of ghost and evil, it was not restrained by any attribute. Once it was entangled, it would definitely be a very troublesome thing to get rid of it. But what Qingliu didn't expect was that after the Flower Rock Monster appeared, the panel summoning function that had been silent for a while suddenly responded. Chapter 45 The Divine Plan. Ancient traces detected. Start exploring. In Qingliu's vision, a burst of blue light quickly spread out from himself to the surroundings, covering the entire 4th floor. This surprised Qingliu. The additional function of the panel is the advanced illustrations. The main function is to charge by exploring things with a long history, so as to summon some things. Qingliu has always remembered this. After all, that's how Agumon came. However, apart from the random ruins before, Qingliu has not encountered anything that meets this requirement during this period, even the lost tower where he is. But now it is suddenly triggered. Then it means that something that didn't exist originally appeared in this place, causing the panel to change. Could it be that? At the same time, lines of blue small words quickly appeared on the panel. Target locked, exploring, ancient keystone detected. Exploring, 108 ancient souls detected. Exploring, exploration progress. 0%, 3%, 8%, 21%, sure enough. Looking at the exploration progress bar growing continuously, Qingliu's eyes fell on the Flower Rock Monster opposite. The only possible variable in this tower so far is the Flower Rock Monster in front of him, which is in a slightly wrong state. Qingliu doesn't know where it came from, why it is in a manic state, and what its attitude towards an Agumon is, but at this moment, he is looking forward to it. He is looking forward to what the panel can summon after exploring the Flower Rock Monster. The first time it was a fixed option Pokemon Agumon. So, what will it be this time? Qingliu doesn't know, but now he must wait until the panel exploration is completed. If he runs away directly, he doesn't know if he can encounter this Flower Rock Monster again next time. Agumon, be alert. If it attacks, we will focus on fighting. We just need to delay it for a little longer. Okay. Agumon, who knows that he only needs to do something, becomes focused. Although it has little physical strength left, the opponent's momentum and aura seem very unusual, but it is no problem to delay for a while. As for what to do when the physical strength is exhausted after the delay, Agumon doesn't know, but Qingliu will definitely have a way. It is so convinced. But unexpectedly, the Flower Rock Monster, which looked very manic, was motionless at this moment, and seemed very quiet, without the momentum when it just rushed down from the 5th floor. Even when Agumon took a fighting posture at any time, it did not react at all. Qingliu was a little confused, but this was good news after all. More than 10 seconds passed quickly, and the progress bar also skyrocketed in this strangely quiet atmosphere. Exploration progress. 97%, 98%, 99%, 100%, exploration completed, can be summoned, summon object, random, yes no, yes. After Qingliu made a choice, the summon object column jumped rapidly like a fruit machine in an arcade. However, it was not various fruits that jumped, but texts and pictures. There were some props and items in the Pokemon world, as well as props and items in the digital world, and even Digimon like Agumon. However, the number of such appearances was very small, and it was almost skipped in an instant. Qingliu watched quietly and couldn't help holding his breath. I saw them flashing before my eyes, and the speed of their jumping gradually slowed down, until finally, they stopped completely. Summoning target, divine plan, summoning, 2 lines of blue words jumped, and the panel began to rotate, and with the rotation, it began to turn into blue particles, and a hole that seemed to connect to the void opened. The next second, something that looked like a small alarm clock, with a black antenna in the upper left corner and 3 buttons in the middle of the screen passed through the hole in the panel and fell into Qingliu's hand. Looking at this thing that appeared in the memory and was bound to the Digimon, Qingliu recognized it at once. The divine plan, that is, the first generation Tyrannosaurus. I was thinking before that since Agumon had appeared, would this thing also appear? Unexpectedly, I really got it right. But what's the use of this thing? Qingliu looked up and down at the divine plan and said to himself. The world he was in now was the world of Pokemon, and Agumon had already been localized and had levels, so its evolution should naturally follow the normal system of Pokemon. So that means it is not very useful to me now. Qingliu looked at the holy plan in his hand and thought about this question quickly in his mind. Suddenly, a white light emanated from the screen in the middle of the holy plan. Then, the holy plan turned into a pool of liquid directly in his palm. However, the holy plan that turned into liquid did not spill onto the ground through the gap between his palms. Instead, it seemed to have consciousness. Before Qingliu could react, it had already entered Qingliu's palm. Qingliu was a little confused for a while. Is this the holy plan, or the holy venom disguised as the holy plan? Especially after seeing a mark exactly the same as the holy plan appear in his palm, Qingliu was even more confused. It's really an unprecedented operation. Qingliu used his other hand to carefully touch and feel the mark. After confirming that there was no other discomfort except for the extra mark, he was even more speechless. What the hell is going on? In Qingliu's confusion, the panel that turned into tiny light spots returned to normal. It was at this time that Qingliu discovered the changes on the panel. Race, Agumon, classification, reptile Pokemon, attribute, dragon, features, sharp claws. Due to its sharp claws, the power of attacks with them is increased. Level 20, exclusive moves, small flame, fire type, power 60, sharp claws, fire type, power 40, small blast. Agumon gathers all its strength to launch a flame attack, which has amazing destructive power, but will consume a lot of physical strength at this stage. Fire type, power 75, mastered moves, none, race value, 360, horsepower 50, attack 72, defense 55, special attack 72, special defense 50, speed 61, intimacy, 70, most important friend, status, exhausted, recovering, information summary, XXXXXX. Divine plan, one of the evolution conditions has been met, level 20/level 40/level 60/level 70, do you want to start evolving? Yes, no. Note, evolution is irreversible. Evolution? Seeing this, Qingliu's expression gradually became solemn. Agumon's level had reached level 20 after he defeated the 3 guardian Pokemon on the 4th floor, which means that he had met the evolutionary conditions as written above, but he did not show any signs of evolution. There was no dazzling light when Pokemon evolved, and there was no special reaction. Agumon looked no different from usual. But after the appearance of the Digimon plan, it suddenly showed that the evolutionary conditions had been met. So that means that even if the summoned Digimon's level has met the conditions, it still needs the assistance of the Digimon plan. Qingliu thought about this very possible thing carefully and didn't care about it. After all, Agumon's level was enough, and the Digimon plan seemed to have merged with him. As the human body of the Digimon plan, he himself was the light of evolution of the Digimon. And now that he had the option of evolution, even if Agumon was not in good condition, Qingliu didn't have to worry about any safety issues when facing the very unusual-looking flower rock monster in front of him. Hey! The originally quiet flower rock monster on the opposite side suddenly let out a low roar. Even its gaseous face showed obvious anger and a hint of brutality, as if it was a demon that was almost crazy. The next moment, the energy on the flower rock monster gushed out and rushed straight towards Aoyagi and Agumon. Aoyagi was also ready to let Agumon evolve. Suddenly, a clear, pleasant but powerful female voice sounded in my ears. Flower rock monster, stop. Chapter 46, Meet the trainer of Sarona's flower rock monster again. G. After hearing this voice, the flower rock monster was stunned for a moment, and its movements and gathered energy also fluctuated for a moment. But then, the violent aura of the flower rock monster emerged again, completely suppressing its rationality, and the rich ghost energy blasted out again. Qingliu naturally heard this abrupt female voice, but he didn't have time to pay attention to it, and he couldn't put his safety in the hands of others. So he didn't stop his movements at all, and directly reached out to choose evolve. But at the moment he took action, a shadow interrupted him. I saw a Pokemon with a height similar to his, which looked like a shark and a dragon, rushing out from behind him, releasing a huge amount of green energy from the sharp claws on the tip of its wings, and facing the flower rock monster's gushing attack head-on. Swish! Just like a pair of scissors easily cutting through cloth, the claws directly tore the ghost energy, and the body passed through it, gliding at a very fast speed in the low altitude, rushing in front of the flower rock monster. Then he jumped, with a completely condescending attitude, and stepped heavily on the wedge stone under the flower rock monster's body. Bang! A dull crash sounded, and the floating flower rock monster was shot down from the air and shot into the ground. When the smoke dissipated, the severely injured flower rock monster did not look injured at all, but instead the aura around it surged, becoming even more ferocious. Jijiji. Jijiji. In the angry roar, the keystone of the flower rock monster kept trembling and trying to stand up again. The next second, a foot wrapped in strong ground energy stepped on its keystone again, directly suppressing all its movements. No matter how the flower rock monster struggled, there was no sign of escape. But even so, a trace of violent and cold aura continued to emanate from the flower rock monster, making it seem as if it had endless power, constantly attacking the seal. Qingliu watched this scene quietly. Fast speed, strong power, and seeing the sharp-toothed land shark stepping on the head of the flower rock monster, his mind instantly determined the identity of the person who had just spoken. Being able to possess the rare dragon-type quasi-god-fanged land shark in the Sinnoh region, and nurturing it very well, possessing such a powerful combat power, and being a woman. I'm sorry, the flower rock monster disturbed you. Sharona, who was wearing a black long dress and had long golden hair, bowed slightly and said, I'm very sorry, I don't know if it has caused you any trouble. If you don't mind, I will make some compensation. Her attitude was sincere, her tone was gentle, and she didn't have a condescending attitude. In addition, she had a very beautiful appearance and figure. Although she didn't have the kind of mature and lovely big sister temperament that I later remembered, Sharona at this moment was full of the slightly immature charm of her age. With the blessing of the two, it was difficult for people to have a bad impression. Besides, the flower rock monster didn't cause any impact on herself, on the contrary, it helped her a lot. Forget about compensation. As for the trouble, it was stopped by the sharp-toothed land shark before it even happened. Qingliu pointed at the sharp-toothed land shark and said, on the contrary, I was very surprised to see Miss Sharona here. Hearing Qingliu calling out her name, Sharona was a little surprised, but she quickly returned to normal when she thought that although she had not challenged the gym or the alliance, there were always many people who knew her. Because there was something I needed to deal with here, I stayed on the 5th floor for a while. I didn't expect the flower rock monster to sneak out while I was taking a nap. I'm very sorry. Sharona apologized again. Stayed for a while, took a nap. Hearing this, Qingliu suddenly had a new understanding of the person in front of him. What is the Lost Tower? It's a cemetery. Taking a nap in a cemetery, this should be something that people with normal brain circuits can't do. At this moment, Qingliu suddenly felt that this future champion seemed to have a similarity with Agumon, a big nerve. Perhaps it was because of this trait that she often appeared and disappeared, making it impossible for those reporters to find her. So, is this rock flower also Miss Sharona's Pokemon? Qingliu asked, thinking of the fact that there was indeed a special rock flower in Sharona's lineup in his memory. Yes. Then can I ask what's wrong with it now? It doesn't look very good. Hearing Qingliu's question, Sharona hesitated for a moment. But then she thought that the rock flower did affect others. Although the other party didn't care about this problem, it was reasonable for him to want to know the whole story. And since the other party was able to reach the 4th floor, it means that he has surpassed many trainers of the same period. His own level must not be too bad. Maybe he can get some useful information from here. I met this rock flower some time ago in a shabby village with few people. At that time, I thought it was a little special, so I took action to subdue it. But later I found that it seemed to be sealed for too long, resulting in too much accumulated energy, so it was extremely unstable after being freed. In order to avoid more serious problems, I thought about guiding it to release this energy. So I came to the Lost Tower, thinking of using the power of the Ghost-type Pokémon here to make this happen, and at the same time I wanted to minimize the impact of the released energy, but Sharona stopped talking here. Qingliu also roughly understood what she meant and said, but it seems to have failed. Yes, even if it has fought with all the Pokémon on the 4th floor and the Pokémon on the 5th floor, even if it was the sharp-toothed land shark, It still has no intention of stopping. After saying that, Sharona came to the Sharptooth land shark and told it to hold it steady, preparing to forcibly take the flower rock monster back into the Poké Ball. Qingliu, who was standing aside, looked at the flower rock monster that was still struggling under the suppression of the Sharptooth land shark, and Sharona's beautiful golden long hair and well-proportioned figure, and fell into silence. If I ignore it, Sharona will eventually solve this problem, but it will take a lot of time and energy to do it, and one is that by accident, she helped me come up with a sacred plan that can help Agumon evolve to maturity. The other is the future beauty champion, and more importantly, in addition to being a champion, Sharona is also a mythologist. She is someone who runs around when she has free time, searching and exploring myths and legends. Although it is somewhat incompetent for a champion, for him personally, Sharona's identity is really a bit too consistent with himself. Because anything in myths and legends that can still exist today must meet the requirement of long history to activate the panel summoning function. Not to mention that Sharona's grandmother is the curator of the largest historical museum in the Sinnoh region, and there must be a lot of good things in her house. At this moment, Qingliu suddenly felt that Sharona exuded a fatal light that was more attractive than her figure, appearance and potential. In terms of emotion, reason and background, he should help and do a favor. So Qingliu opened the panel, carefully checked the detailed information of the flower rock monster, and the specific status of the status bar, and when Sharona was about to take back the flower rock monster, Qingliu spoke. Ms. Sharona, have you ever tried to have those ghost-type Pokemon use abilities like absorption on the flower rock? Sharona replied, we have tried it, and even attacks like absorb have no effect. The flower rock is now in a state where it never gets tired. Qingliu shook his head and said, I'm not talking about absorbing the physical strength of the flower rock. Sharona frowned slightly, turned around and looked at Qingliu, wondering, if not physical strength, what else can it absorb? Whether it is Pokemon or humans, they all have positive and negative emotions, which is a very normal emotion. Generally speaking, most of the abilities or hobbies of ghost-type Pokemon are related to negative emotions, which is also the source of their power. Qingliu stopped there. He believed that Sharona, who knew enough about Pokemon, would not be unable to react. Sharona quickly seemed to have thought of something and said quickly, are you saying that the flower rock has become like this because of its excessive negative emotions? Chapter 47, Dream Demon Ghost Star Absorbing Technique. Yes. Aowagi nodded. The overall setting of the Pokemon, Globular, is very unique. Whether it is the illustrated book, the ability, or other information, it highlights its uniqueness. It ranks 108th in the Sinnoh illustrated book, weighs 108 kilograms, and has a racial value of 108 for defense and special defense. It appears in the game at water weight 108, and most importantly, it is composed of 108 souls. Because among these 108 souls, there are extremely vicious ones mixed in, causing it to eventually become an evil creature composed of evil thoughts. This evil spirit is a kind of negative emotions gathered together. And these negative emotions are the negative energy that ghost Pokemon like. Sharona also thought of this. She lowered her head and looked at the Globular, which was struggling hard under the suppression of the fanged land shark, and the terrifying expression on its gas-like face from time to time. The current state of Globular is indeed very similar to the rampage state caused by the explosion of negative energy. Unexpectedly, the place that I overlooked was actually spotted by this person who looked 1 or 2 years younger than me. The other party obviously had something real, and Sharona couldn't help but become serious, looking at Qingliu. Then what is the most convenient and quickest way to solve this situation? If I need other things to assist, I will find a way to get it as soon as possible. No need to be so troublesome. Qingliu said, just like you said before, just guide them and release them. I have already told you how to do it. Told me? Sharona carefully recalled everything Qingliu had just said, and finally locked in the sentence, let the ghost Pokemon use absorption and other abilities on the flower monster. Combined with this subsequent conversation, the absorption here should not refer to the absorption of physical strength, so, is it the absorption of negative energy? Sharona understood it in an instant. Negative energy is a delicacy for ghost Pokemon, but the flower monster eats too much and has become indigestion. If some of this energy is distributed, the problem of the flower monster can be perfectly solved. However, even though most ghost-type Pokemon love negative energy, it is difficult to capture it with the naked eye. If it is just eating and digesting, Most ghost-type Pokemon may be able to do it, but if it is to control, it may be difficult to do it unless you're good at it. So now, who will perform this operation? Sirona's eyes quickly swept around, and finally landed on the 3 Pokemon that were previously ravaged by the Flower Rock monster, and then overturned by Qingliu, and finally gradually recovered some spirits under Qingliu's few healing sprays. 1 Zubat and 2 Dream Monsters. Zubat can only suck blood and physical strength, and it is not a ghost attribute, so just give up. The other is the Dream Monster. The knowledge about Pokemon in Sirona's mind gradually emerged, and her eyes slowly looked at the red Buddhist beads on the necks of the 2 trembling Dream Monsters. This bead can absorb the emotion of fear, so by the same token, it can also absorb the same type of negative emotions. If there are more, it is not impossible to draw away the negative energy from the Flower Rock monster. As for the issue of quantity, there is no need to worry about it in the Lost Tower. Thinking of this, Sirona suddenly looked at Qingliu. Qingliu nodded silently. After getting Qingliu's confirmation, Sirona directly took back the Flower Rock monster by force, and then asked the Sharptooth Land Shark to kidnap all the Dream Demons and Ghost Pokemon in the Lost Tower. Look at this reaction in action. At this moment, Qingliu had to say that he was worthy of being the future champion, and his knowledge and IQ were far beyond his peers. He was able to make judgments and match the corresponding practices in such a short time, relying on the advanced worldview and hard knowledge in his mind before crossing, as well as the assistance of the advanced illustration function of the panel. Sirona, on the other hand, relied purely on what she saw and heard and the knowledge accumulated by the natives of the Pokemon world. Although there is still an insurmountable gap between the two, it is very good that Sirona can do this. And in this way, the communication between the two smart people can be directly opened, saving the difficulty of communication like with Xiaosong. Soon, the Sharptooth Land Shark came back. It also brought back 6 Incubi and 9 Ghastlies. Together with the 2 Incubi on the 4th floor, the 17 ghost Pokemon trembled under the fierce gaze of the Sharptooth Land Shark, and were full of fear of the Sharptooth Land Shark. Sirona took out the Poké Ball and released the Flowering Rock again. Gigi. Hehohe. As soon as it was released, the Flowering Rock let out a low evil laugh, looking at all the Pokemon and people in front of it with a sinister look. If it hadn't been stepped on the face by the Sharptooth Land Shark as soon as it came out, it would have roared and attacked the Incubi and Ghastly. But even so, the terrifying appearance of the Flowering Rock and the surging aura on its body instantly made the 17 ghost Pokemon feel like they were falling into an ice cave, and they didn't even dare to move. If someone who didn't know the situation saw this scene, they might think that the Flowering Rock was stronger than the Sharptooth Land Shark. And this was obviously the result of the extremely strong negative emotions in the Flowering Rock suppressing the ghost Pokemon. Don't be afraid. I just need you to help clean up some of the energy from the Flower Rock monster, and then I will let you go. This energy will also be of great benefit to you. While using healing spray to help clean the wounds and speed up the recovery of the ghost Pokemon brought by the Pokemon, Sirona spoke to the Incubus and Ghastly in a gentle voice. Qingliu. When Incubus and Ghastly heard that they wanted to extract and absorb energy from the Flower Rock monster, they shook their heads and refused, as if they were afraid that Sirona would not understand what they meant. This made Sirona's face suddenly stiffen. Qingliu, who was watching this scene quietly, couldn't help but shake his head. Although he has great potential and has begun to show his age is a floor after all, and his proficiency in doing this kind of thing is far from enough. Qingliu passed Sirona and came to a group of Incubus and Ghastly, staring at them expressionlessly, and only spoke slowly when the atmosphere became heavier. I feel like you seem to have misunderstood a problem. This is just to inform you that you must do this, not to discuss with you. If you obey, you can live. If you don't obey, you will die. Land Shark. Qingliu raised his hand and looked at Land Shark. Land Shark didn't react to Qingliu's eyes at first, but then gradually understood. He followed Qingliu's actions and raised his claws towards the Incubus and Ghastly. The dragon energy surged, and he looked like he would fight directly if he didn't agree with him. The Incubus and Ghastly were immediately scared, and finally you looked at me, I looked at you and chose to help very sincerely. So, a very strange ceremony began. The Flower Rock monster lay on the ground, and Land Shark stepped directly on its keystone with one big foot. The 8 Incubus surrounded them with the 2 of them as the center of the circle. The 9 Ghastlies surrounded the Incubus in a larger circle, which looked like a formation formed by Pokemon. Seeing that all the Pokemon were ready, Qingliu said, "Let's get started." As soon as the voice fell, the 8 dream monsters immediately activated their power, and the red beads on their necks instantly burst into red light, shooting towards the flower rock monster that was suppressed on the ground. A stream of dark red, dark purple, gray, black, slowly emerged from the flower rock monster, was drawn away by the red light, appeared in the air, and finally transferred to the 8 dream monsters. Chapter 48 Battle Invitation. Almost as soon as this negative energy touched the incubi, the dark green body began to change to deeper and darker color. Then came the sharp and piercing howl of pain from the incubi. "Gastus, do it." Seeing that the incubi could not bear it, Qingliu spoke quickly. The ghastly's eyes lit up with a faint blue light, and they pulled some of the negative energy that the incubi had drawn from the flower rock monster to their bodies. Kauji. The ghastlies were the same as the incubi. Almost at the moment of contact, the smiles on their faces could not be maintained, and they let out a series of low roars with painful expressions. Is this really going to work? Sirona looked at this scene with some concern. Whether it was the incubi or the ghastly, they did not seem to be in a state that could endure. If not only did she fail in the end, but also made these Pokemon pay a painful price, she would feel a little guilty. Although it looks painful, and it is probably very painful in reality, it is not life-threatening. Don't worry. Qingliu stared at the status column on the panel that only he could see. The incubi and ghastly shown on it were almost all weak and painful, and 2 of them were extremely painful, but there was no indication that they were life-threatening. The information given by the panel has not been wrong so far. Since it shows this, it means there is no problem. Sirona did not have a panel. After hearing what Qingliu said, she could only look at the incubi and ghastly with some concern, as well as the flower rock monster lying in the middle, which was suppressed by the sharp Death Land shark. The extraction of negative energy was carried out in an orderly manner in this atmosphere. As time passed, Sirona found that things were really as Qingliu said. Although they cried in pain, each incubi and ghastly did not seem to be in a dying state. On the contrary, some of them became more energetic, and even the sound of their cries became louder and louder. Later, Sirona began to feel uncomfortable with the constant cries. After their bodies get used to the pain, they will consciously or unconsciously start to digest the negative energy. Qingliu explained after watching their status on the panel begin to return to normal, and 2 of them even upgraded directly. It must be said that Qingliu was a little jealous when he saw this scene. He and Agumon had gone through hard training and constant fighting to upgrade their levels after winning the battle, but these guys could upgrade by just shouting. If Agumon didn't have the ghost attribute and the ability to absorb negative energy, Qingliu really wanted to throw Agumon in as well. And in the scene where the party gradually went from pain to masochism, half an hour passed quickly. The negative energy wrapped around the body of the flower rock monster was extracted bit by bit, and digested bit by bit by the incubus and ghastly. Even the angry and vicious eyes before became more agile at this moment. Especially when it saw the big paw of the sharp Death Land shark stepping on its face, its expression was full of doubts. From the outside, there is about 1/3 of the negative emotions around the flower rock, but the nightmare and ghastly seem to be reaching their limit. Sirona quickly analyzed beside him. Yes, I can see it. After all, Sirona is just a special flower rock. If Qingliu remembers correctly, in the near future, the mental power used by this flower rock will even have the ability to freeze other people's moves. The changes that happen to such Pokemon are definitely not something that the ordinary ghost-type Pokemon in Lost Tower can bear. Even if the ratio reaches 17:1, it won't work. However, Qingliu's initial goal was not to drain all of it, which is unrealistic. As long as he can absorb a part of it and let the flower rock return to normal, he will achieve his goal. Let it release the rest by itself. Seeing that the nightmare and ghastly reached their limits one after another and had to stop absorbing negative emotions, Qingliu slowly said, if it is all, the flower rock may not be able to use it freely, but with only 1/3, it should be able to completely release and transform it into its own power in just one battle. Sirona did not speak, but waved to the sharp Death Land shark. The sharp Death Land shark understood and let go of the flower rock monster. The flower rock monster then floated in the air, and after floating back and forth twice, it looked at Sirona with an embarrassed expression. It's okay, this is not your problem. I'm already very happy that you can recover. Sirona stretched out her hand to comfort the flower rock monster, then turned around and said to Qingliu solemnly, Thank you very much for your help to the Flower Rock monster, thank you. Chijiji the Flower Rock monster followed Sirona very actively and called Qingliu, and then its eyes fell on Agumon who had been standing next to Qingliu. Chiji. He. Flower Rock monster, no, I just helped you, your behavior is very rude. As the trainer of Flower Rock monster, Sirona naturally knew what it meant. Thank you very much, but also very curious, especially because Flower Rock monster always made trouble and was beaten by the sharp-toothed land shark. Flower Rock monster advocated fighting more. So Sirona stopped it with a very serious expression. Seeing Sirona's unfriendly expression, coupled with the fanged land shark that was already approaching, the Flower Rock monster immediately shrank, and even the gas-like face on the keystone shrank a lot. Compared to Sirona's stop, Qingliu was more interested after hearing Agumon's translation next to him. From the beginning when the Flower Rock monster just appeared, after the panel exploration summoned the Holy Plan, Agumon also met the conditions for evolution and could achieve evolution. However, this original evolution process was interrupted by the sudden appearance of Sirona and the fanged land shark, and had to be cancelled. But now that the Flower Rock monster still wants to fight once, Qingliu also became interested. If facing the fanged land shark, which is still 10 levels behind even after the level surge, Qingliu feels that the disadvantage is too great and it may not be a good opportunity. But against the Flower Rock monster, no one can say which side the balance of victory will tilt to. And he really wanted to see who was better, the Agumon that had evolved to its mature stage or the globes in the future Sinnoh champion Sirona's console lineup, under the condition that both were at level 20. I can accept the battle, but now both your Pokemon and mine need some time to rest and adjust their conditions. Seeing that Aoyagi had taken the initiative to agree, Sirona glanced at globes with some dissatisfaction, and finally thanked Aoyagi. After all, the Pokemon she had now were either strong enough to crush globes, such as Garchomp, or were completely no match for globes. If she wanted to properly consume the remaining one-third of globe's negative energy, she had to fight with Pokemon of the same level. And Aoyagi, who had already made it to the 4th floor of the Lost Tower, was definitely strong enough. Then let's set the time for tomorrow. Is there any designated location? No, but I suggest going to someplace with fewer people. Qingliu's mind flashed with a place where he had met the little song Snow Hat monster before, and he said, it should be near the small river not far south of Suai town. Okay. Because an elderly person in my family is sick, I temporarily brought him back from his hometown to see a doctor tomorrow. There are a lot of typos in the hasty typing. Please forgive me. I will correct it later and update it another day to compensate. Please forgive me. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49. My family has the final say on this matter. Did you choose such a remote place because you don't want to expose its information? Sirona pointed at Agumon with her slender finger and asked curiously. Just now, when she came down from the 5th floor and commanded the sharp-toothed land shark to stop the Flower Rock monster, she had already discovered this very unique Pokemon. Because even after she went through all the knowledge she had learned in her mind, she couldn't find any information about this Pokemon. Even those Pokemon that have disappeared and become extinct in the long river of history did not match it. This made Sirona very interested, but she was busy with the Flower Rock monster just now and had no time to pay attention to this Pokemon. As for Sirona's question, Qingliu was silent for a moment and nodded in agreement. If possible, Qingliu didn't want to expose Agumon even in front of Sirona, but when Sirona appeared before, his focus was on the Flower Rock monster, and it was too late to react. However, considering the character of the champion, there is no need to worry about leaking the secret if she finds out. Moreover, since he can use a quasi-godlike land shark, which has good potential, as the identity background of the initial Pokemon, there is no need to do anything tricky. So instead of being shy, it is better to admit it generously. Because it has not been registered in the Pokédex, I am afraid that some people will have improper intentions because of its small number, so I usually try not to let it show its face. This time, I will deliberately avoid the camera every time I pass a level in the challenge of the Lost Tower. Indeed. Regarding Qingliu's approach, Sirona nodded and agreed, even if it is the first time I have seen such a Pokemon, it is good to be careful. After all, even if it is clean on the surface, there are still filth that the league cannot clean up. Can I touch it? Qingliu did not answer immediately, but turned his head to look at Agumon with an inquiring look. Agumon lowered his head, crossed his hands in front of him, and did not meet Qingliu's gaze. For you, the difference between beauty and ugliness of humans is not big. Why are you suddenly shy? Qingliu said with a smile. Agumon immediately raised his head and retorted, I'm not shy. It's just that the first time someone came up and asked to touch me, I felt a little. The sudden voice made Sirona's mouth open into an O shape. After being surprised for a while, she finally reacted and looked at Agumon and said, it can actually talk. Yes, it has been able to talk since the first day I met Agumon. As long as the panel and Digimon are not involved, there is no need to deliberately hide the ability of talking, which will be discovered sooner or later and is rare but not non-existent in the Pokemon world. Aoyagi then told some basic information about Agumon. After digesting it for a while, Sirona gradually adapted to this information. No wonder you are so careful. A rare species that can talk is likely to be targeted. Then, she looked at Agumon and asked gently, Agumon, can I touch you? Agumon was still a little embarrassed, but since Qingliu did not show any disgust, it finally nodded. Seeing Agumon agreed, Sirona then gently placed her hand on Agumon's head, stroking it while observing it with curiosity. Its appearance and form look very much like the Pokemon that was resurrected from 100 million years ago in the Unova region, Baby Tyrannosaurus, but the color and details are wrong, the arms are stronger and the claws are sharper. The most important thing is that Agumon's two big green eyes are very smart. Combined with its rare ability to talk, it is clear that its IQ and reaction ability should be higher than Baby Tyrannosaurus, and even most Pokemon cannot compare to it. The more Sirona observed, the more surprised she was. Because this Pokemon that had never been seen before not only had very tight skin and muscles, but also exuded a very different aura, as if it was born to fight. This feeling was just like the sharp-toothed land shark that she had chosen from a bunch of quasi-gods. No, it could even be said to be even better than that. And judging from its current height and weight, it should still have room for evolution. I wonder what level it will reach after it evolves. Sirona suddenly felt a long-standing curiosity and desire for tomorrow's battle. She wanted to see how such an unknown Pokemon would perform in battle. At the same time, she was also looking forward to whether the trainer Aoyagi would bring her a surprise. You helped me solve the problem of the Flower Rock monster, how about I do you a favor? Sirona stood up and asked, gently patting Agumon's head. Qingliu looked at Sirona with some doubts. What do you mean? I think you are so cautious. In addition to worrying that the special nature of Agumon will attract the black hands of Pokemon hunters and evil organizations, I am afraid you are also worried that the Alliance will have ideas about Agumon. Indeed, there are considerations in this regard. Qingliu was silent for a moment and nodded, then thought of something and asked, so what do you mean by help? I will help you prove the legal source of Agumon in public, and let your family contact Professor Oak, who makes the Kanto region to log the basic information of Agumon. In this way, the Alliance will not be able to trouble you on these issues. Hearing Sirona's words, Qingliu also thought it was feasible. Moreover, in this way, not only the Alliance, but also those rats in the gutter who want to deal with themselves and Agumon will have to consider the existence of Sirona. No one wants to be stared at by a champion every day, even if it is a legendary beast. This is no longer an ordinary help, it is simply a big help. However, this will also very tactfully pull himself to the ship of Sirona's family. Of course, this is not a bad thing. Anyway, Sirona's identity as a mythology scholar is also his target for surveillance in the future, so it doesn't matter whether it is bound or not. I want to know how you are going to prove it for me. My family are all experts in studying Sinnoh mythology, and my grandmother is the curator of the Sinnoh History Museum. Isn't it my decision to write Agumon into Pokemon resurrected from a fossil of a certain era? Sirona said inadvertently with a hint of playfulness. Qingliu was silent. What she said does make sense. The textbooks of ancient history are probably written by her family. It is not difficult to add a Pokemon that actually exists. To be honest, I really need your help with this, but is this not proportional to my previous efforts? Yes, so I have conditions. Qingliu looked at Sirona and asked, what conditions? Sirona said seriously, I hope that you can use all your strength to fight me in tomorrow's battle. I can do it without you saying it. Sirona nodded with satisfaction and stretched out her hand. I don't know your name yet. Qingliu. Then, see you tomorrow, Qingliu. Qingliu stretched out his hand and shook it with Sirona. See you tomorrow. Thanks to Feng's Engay for the 500 points reward, and thanks to 2018022222120333334 for the 500 points reward. Thanks to the big guys for the monthly tickets. There are too many so I won't list them one by one. Thank you for your support. Thank you all for reading, voting and comments. Chapter 50 Leaving the Tower. After the agreement was made, Qingliu took back Agumon and climbed to the 5th floor of the Lost Tower without any obstacles. Although the ghost Pokemon guarding the last floor had all been captured by the Sharp-Tooth Land Shark to do hard labor, and the remaining ones had been beaten up by the Flower Rock monster before, there was no one to fight with here. But Qingliu still remembered clearly that there was a reward for clearing the level. After all, half of the reason he came here in the first place was for this. Making money is not bad, not to mention that it was picked up for free. Taking advantage of this time when they should have been fighting on the 5th floor, Qingliu and Sharona had some simple exchanges about Pokemon knowledge. Qingliu, with his understanding beyond the version, forcibly brought in Sharona's worldview, and Sharona, based on her solid basic skills, pointed out some of Qingliu's shortcomings one by one. This is exactly what Qingliu, a time traveler, needs now, the theoretical knowledge accumulated over countless years in the Pokemon world. Both parties felt that this brief exchange benefited a lot. After the relationship became more familiar, Sharona recommended several good libraries to Qingliu where he could borrow relevant books. After Qingliu wrote them down one by one, he glanced at the Sharp-Tooth Land Shark sitting quietly next to him, and suddenly he had the idea of touching it. He had not come into contact with many Pokemon since he came to the Pokemon world. The only one he really touched was the pirated version of Agumon. However, Sharp-Tooth Land Shark seemed to have a bit of its tsundere nature, and was not as easy to get close to people as Agumon. Qingliu just put his hand on it and ran to the other side before he had time to feel it carefully. Ha 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 ha. Sharona couldn't help laughing when she saw this scene. Qingliu gave up the idea of continuing with an embarrassed look. After feeling that the time was about right, Qingliu prepared to leave the tower, and Sharona followed him. Are you going out too? Aren't you afraid of being blocked by those reporters? Qingliu was deeply impressed by the attitude of those reporters who saw Xia Song as if they had grabbed a life-saving straw before challenging the Lost Tower. Sharona is more popular with reporters than Xia Song, and will definitely be the focus of attention. Sharona is very open-minded about this. When I asked Land Shark to take the Pokemon from other floors, it must have been captured by the surveillance camera. It doesn't make any difference whether I go out or not. If it's too much, I will just fly away. Fly away directly. Qingliu once again remembered the common points between Agumon and Sharona, smiled bitterly and shook his head. Then the two of them and the dragon went to the next floor of the Lost Tower. Seeing Qingliu and Sharona leave, the Dream Demon and Ghastly, who had been hiding quietly in the 4th floor without saying a word, changed their humble appearance just now and flew around excitedly. Go down the 3rd floor, the 2nd floor, the 1st floor, and go to the exit. Almost at the moment when Qingliu and the others stepped out of the Lost Tower and just felt the sunlight, they suddenly saw black in front of them, and dozens of reporters carrying cameras and holding microphones instantly surrounded them. Most of them rushed to Sharona, and the other part surrounded Qingliu so tightly that no one could get through. Seeing this, the Sharp-Toothed Land Shark stood in front of Sharona with a fierce look on his face, as if he would attack anyone who dared to approach. No reporter went up to ask for trouble, and kept a distance to ask questions. Qingliu was not treated this way. The reporters squeezed him so hard that he staggered back and forth several times before he could stabilize his body. At this time, more than 10 microphones were handed to their mouths. Mr. Qingliu, as one of the only 2 people who have passed the 5-story Lost Tower in the past 10 years, how do you feel? How did you break the record for the length of time spent on each floor of the Lost Tower and successfully advance to the next level every time? The Pokemon you use is not seen on the surveillance screen every time. Is it a rare Pokemon? Or is it a ghost type like most of the Pokemon in the Lost Tower? Or, did you win by physical combat? A reporter showed off his muscles while talking, staring directly at Qingliu. Another reporter immediately squeezed him aside and handed him a microphone and asked, I heard that you, Mr. Qingliu, are dating Miss Xia Song. Is this true? Did you challenge the Lost Tower because you wanted to prove your strength to Miss Xiaosong? May I ask why Miss Sirona came out with you? You have been in there together for so long, will you fall in love with someone else? Voices rang in his ears one after another, and as the questions became more and more outrageous, Qingliu had to deal with them hastily and start to find a way to get out. Fortunately, the mayor with a friendly smile on his face came over soon, and his assistant walked beside him to act as a human wall to separate all the reporters around him. I am the mayor of Sui Town. First of all, I want to congratulate you, Mr. Qingliu. You and Miss Sirona are the first male trainer and female trainer to pass the level in 10 years. The mayor stretched out his hand to Qingliu and said gently. Qingliu glanced at him, and then glanced around. Feeling that the number of reporters seemed to be increasing invisibly, and even about to equal that of Sirona, Qingliu roughly understood the operation of the mayor in front of him, so he directly reached out and shook the mayor's hand. I am very happy to receive this honor, but this is not just my own effort. I also want to thank all the staff behind the scenes, Miss Xiaosong and Miss Sirona for their help, and everyone who has silently supported me. Finally, I need to thank you, the mayor. Thank you for providing such an affordable and challenging trial site. The mayor was stunned when he heard Qingliu's words. What's wrong with this guy? He hasn't even been told the words yet, but he has learned it without a teacher? The mayor even doubted whether Qingliu was his own agent at this moment. But the mayor is the mayor after all. Although he didn't understand why he entered the plot so quickly, he still switched directly to the state of immersion. This is just my job. I am very satisfied to be able to make a little contribution to the trainers who come and go to Random Town. On the contrary, excellent trainers like you and Miss Sirona are rare talents in Arsena. The future of the Alliance needs you. No, the mayor is diligent and low-key. It is the cornerstone of the Alliance to discover excellent trainers. No. After a wave of commercial praise, Qingliu and the mayor held hands tightly together, and at the same time slightly turned their faces to give reporters a perfect photo angle. Afterwards, the mayor handed the reward to Qingliu in front of the camera, and after praising Qingliu again for being a very promising trainer, Qingliu made a few polite remarks and sneaked away on the pretext of going to the toilet. Away from the crowd and breathing fresh air, Qingliu couldn't help but feel refreshed physically and mentally. I didn't expect you to be so good at dealing with this kind of thing. A crisp voice came from under the tree next to him. I don't want to either, but if I don't do this, I'll be pestered by those guys until dark. I don't have that much time to play those little tricks with them, so I have to get the money and run away quickly. Hearing the voice, Qingliu knew that Xiaosong had followed him, and patted the backpack containing the bonus on his body and replied. Xiaosong's eyes also fell on the backpack. If I remember correctly, the reward for clearing the level is 150,000 Alliance coins. This time you have made a lot of money. You know, even my father's annual salary for running a gym is just 300,000. I didn't expect you to actually do it. Xiaosong suddenly seemed to remember something, and looked up and down at Qingliu with a scrutinizing look and said, I remember that when we were on the road before, you told me that the most you said was to maintain the first place and fight for the second place, but now you have cleared the 5th level directly. Are you pretending to be a pig in front of me, and then attacking me who can't even pass the 1st level? This is not pretending, it's just luck and a little bit of strength. Qingliu pinched a universe between his fingers and said. Xiaosong looked for several seconds before reacting, and then used Bullet Fist. Qingliu dodged quickly and said, Okay, I was just kidding. I didn't expect Agumon's level to rise so fast, and his physical strength recovery can barely keep up. Of course, even so, the upper limit is only the 4th level. As for the 5th level, after Qingliu briefly told about Sharona, Xiaosong was extremely shocked. Even she had to marvel at Qingliu's ability to think of a solution in such a short time and successfully implement it, solving the problem that her father's neighborhood kid couldn't solve. If it were her, her mind would be a mess, and she would end up staring blankly. But, just because of this, you agreed to fight her. Yes. Are you confused? Even if Agumon's level has been improved a lot, he has no chance of winning against her. Although that rock monster looks medium level, it is very strong. Sharona used it to clear the Lost Tower and break the fastest clearance record. Xiaosong said anxiously and worriedly, You said before that you had the idea of challenging her. I feel that you do have this potential after spending these few days together, but that is in the future. If you fight her now on impulse, you may be hide and lose confidence if you are not careful. Don't worry. Qingliu stopped, turned around and looked at Xiaosong and said with a smile, since I am willing to agree to the fight, it means that I have a certain confidence, even if the opponent is Sharona. I need to write the whole story clearly, whether it is detailed or just briefly, so don't say I'm lazy. I have skipped a lot of small details to speed up the progress. I even have to go to the previous chapters to fill in those details when I feel there is a sense of disconnection. I hope you can understand my writing style. Also, I usually don't delete comments. If I find that the comments are gone, it is probably because the system swallowed them, or when I modified the chapter, the sentence arrangement changed and squeezed them out. Finally, tomorrow I will start the battle against Sharona and the evolution plot. I will take advantage of the holiday to add more to what I said, and update 3 chapters tomorrow. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.